Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Nightmare Narratives. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious. Where are you watching from and what time is it in your part of the world? Now find your cozy spot and relax. My name is Mike Sullivan, and I've been a park ranger in the Oregon mountains for 12 years now. Every morning, I do the same thing. I wake up, make 2 cups of coffee, and walk into the woods to talk to my best friend Tommy. The thing is, Tommy's been dead for 12 years. This morning was like all the others. September air was crisp and clean, and the tall pine trees stretched up to touch the sky. I carried both coffee cups in my hands, steam rising from them like little ghosts. My boots made soft sounds on the pine needles as I walked down the trail I knew by heart. "Beautiful day, isn't it, Tommy?" I said to the empty air beside me. I always walked slow so he could keep up. Tommy never was much of a hiker. The forest was alive with sounds. Birds sang their morning songs. Squirrels chattered at each other, and somewhere far off, a woodpecker was working on an old oak tree. These sounds usually made me feel better about the nightmares I had every night. The forest never judged me. It never asked questions I couldn't answer. I reached our spot by the stream and set both coffee cups down on the flat rock we always used as a table. The water bubbled and laughed as it ran over the stones. I sat down and pulled out my sandwich. "Ham and cheese again," I told Tommy. "I know you always liked turkey better, but the store was out." I ate half the sandwich and left the other half on the rock next to his coffee cup. "There you go, buddy. Don't say I never gave you anything." A deer stepped out from behind the trees on the other side of the stream. She was beautiful, with big brown eyes and spots on her back. She looked at me for a long moment, then bent down to drink from the water. I smiled. Tommy and I saw a deer just like her once, a long time ago, right before everything went wrong. The smell of the forest filled my nose, clean and green and alive, pine needles and fresh water and earth. Not like the other smells I sometimes remembered, not like blood and gunpowder and fear. Here in the woods, those smells couldn't find me. I pulled out my compass to check our location. Even though I knew exactly where we were, I always checked my compass. Had to make sure I wasn't lost. I'd been lost before, and terrible things happened when I got lost. A stick cracked somewhere behind me. My hand went to my rifle without thinking. 12 years of being a ranger, but some reflexes never die. Some fears never go away. "Just an animal, Tommy," I said, but my voice shook a little. "Nothing to worry about here. We're safe in the woods. We're always safe here." But as I said those words, something changed. The birds stopped singing all at once, like someone had turned off a radio. The squirrels went quiet. Even the stream seemed to whisper instead of laugh. I looked down at my compass. The needle was spinning in circles round and round like it couldn't find north anymore, like it was as lost as I was. "Tommy," I whispered, but for the first time in 12 years, I couldn't feel him next to me. I was alone in the woods, and something was very, very wrong. "I need to tell you about Tommy. I need to tell you why I come out here every day, why I talk to a dead man, why I can't sleep at night without seeing his face." It was 1950. I was 23 years old, and the Army sent me and Tommy to Korea. We'd been best friends since we were kids, growing up on the same street, playing the same games. When we got drafted, we promised each other we'd stick together. We'd watch each other's backs. Tommy was the brave one, always had been. When we were kids and the older boys picked on me, Tommy would step in front of me. "Leave Mike alone," he'd say, even when they were bigger than both of us. That was just who Tommy was. The war was nothing like the movies. It was cold and wet and scary. We spent weeks in the hills, watching for enemy soldiers, trying not to get shot. Tommy always made jokes to keep our spirits up. "Hey, Mike," he'd whisper in our foxhole at night. When we get home, let's go camping, but somewhere with room service. I'd laugh, but my hands would shake when I held my rifle. Tommy never seemed scared. Maybe he was, but he never showed it. The ambush happened on a Tuesday morning in November. We were walking through a valley with our unit when the shooting started. Bullets came from everywhere. The trees, the rocks, the hills above us. Men started falling, screaming, running for cover. I dove behind a big rock and pressed my face into the dirt. My heart was beating so fast I thought it might explode. The sound of gunfire was so loud I couldn't think straight. That's when I heard Tommy calling my name. "Mike! Mike, help me!" I looked up and saw him. He was caught in the open, no cover, enemy bullets kicking up dirt all around him. He was trying to crawl toward me, but his leg was bleeding bad. His eyes were wide with fear, looking right at me. "Please, Mike, help me!" I had my rifle. I could have shot back at the enemy soldiers. I could have run out and dragged Tommy to safety. I could have done something, anything, but I didn't move. I stayed behind that rock, shaking like a leaf, while my best friend got torn apart by bullets. I watched him die while I did nothing. The last thing he said was my name. When the shooting finally stopped, I crawled over to where Tommy lay. His blue eyes were still open, still looking at me, but there was no life in them anymore. Just emptiness. I held his hand and cried like a baby. "I'm sorry, Tommy. I'm so sorry." But sorry doesn't bring back the dead. After the war, I couldn't go home. Couldn't face Tommy's family. Couldn't face the questions. So I came out here to Oregon, became a park ranger, thought maybe if I helped people, hikers, campers, lost kids, maybe I could make up for what I didn't do. But you can't make up for letting your best friend die. That's why I talk to Tommy every day. That's why I bring him coffee and sandwiches. That's why I can't sleep without pills, and why I check my compass all the time. Because I got lost that day in Korea, lost my courage, lost my best friend. And now, sitting by this stream with my spinning compass, I had the terrible feeling that something had found me, something that knew what I'd done, something that had been waiting 12 years to settle the score. The forest was still too quiet. Even the stream seemed to hold its breath. "Tommy!" I whispered to the empty air. "If you're there, if you can hear me, I'm scared." For the first time since that day in Korea, I told the truth. I sat by the stream for a long time, waiting for the birds to start singing again. They didn't. The silence felt heavy, like a thick blanket pressed down over everything. Even my breathing sounded too loud. I picked up Tommy's coffee cup. It was still warm, which was strange. I'd made the coffee an hour ago, and the morning air was cold, but the cup felt like someone had just been holding it. That's when I smelled it. Not pine trees or fresh water. Something else. Something that made my stomach turn and my hands shake. It smelled like the hills in Korea, like dirt and old blood and fear sweat, like that terrible day 12 years ago. I stood up fast, knocking over my own coffee cup. Brown liquid spilled across the rock and into the stream. "No," I said out loud, "not here. That smell doesn't belong here." But the smell got stronger. I looked around the forest, and everything looked the same, but felt different, wrong. Like someone had moved all the trees just a little bit to the left while I wasn't watching. I started walking back toward my ranger station, but my feet felt heavy. Each step was harder than the last. My compass was still spinning in circles, the needle going round and round like it was lost. That's when I saw the footprint. It was huge, much bigger than a man's foot, pressed deep into the soft dirt by the stream. But it wasn't shaped like a bear paw or deer hoof. It looked almost human, but wrong. Too long, too wide, with marks that might have been claws. I knelt down next to it. The print was fresh. So fresh that water was still seeping into it from the damp ground. Whatever made this had been here just minutes ago. Maybe it was still here, watching me. I looked around the trees, but I couldn't see anything moving. Just shadows and more shadows. My radio crackled to life on my belt. Static mixed with what sounded like voices, but I couldn't make out the words. Then, for just a second, I heard something that made my blood freeze. Machine gun fire. far away like an echo from a long time ago. I grabbed the radio. Hello? Hello, this is Ranger Sullivan. Is anyone there? More static, then silence. I kept walking, but the path didn't look right. I'd walked this trail thousands of times, knew every rock and tree, but now there were branches across the path that hadn't been there before. Trees that seemed too close together, shadows that fell the wrong way, and more footprints, big ones, following the path I always took like something had been tracking my daily routine, learning my habits. My hands were shaking now. I tried to radio for help again, but all I got was that static mixed with sounds that shouldn't be there. Sounds like gunfire and men screaming and someone calling my name from very far away. I found my ranger hat hanging from a tree branch about 20 feet off the ground. That was impossible. I was wearing my hat. I reached up and touched my head, and my hat was still there. But there was another one hanging in the tree, torn and bloody like something had used claws on it. The smell of Korea was everywhere now. In the air, in the trees soaked into the ground. I could taste it in my mouth, metallic and bitter and wrong. I started walking faster, then jogging, then running, but no matter which direction I went, the path led deeper into the woods. My compass spun wildly, and the sun seemed to move across the sky too fast, casting long shadows that reached for me like fingers. Behind me, I could hear something big moving through the trees, not trying to be quiet. Breaking branches, crushing leaves, getting closer with each step. I ran harder, my breath coming in short gasps. The path twisted and turned, and I realized I was completely lost. Lost in woods I'd known for 12 years. Lost like I'd been lost that day in Korea when everything went wrong. The footsteps behind me got louder, closer, and then I heard a voice calling through the trees. A voice I knew better than my own. "Mike, Mike, help me!" It was Tommy's voice, just like that day in the war, just like in my nightmares. But Tommy was dead. I'd watched him die. I stopped running and turned around, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Something was coming through the trees toward me, something big and dark and wrong, and it was calling my name. I couldn't move. My feet felt like they were stuck in concrete. The voice kept calling from the trees, getting closer. "Mike, Mike, help me, please!" It sounded exactly like Tommy. The same voice that used to tell jokes in our foxhole. The same voice that called my name while bullets tore him apart. Then I saw it. The thing that stepped out from behind the trees was huge, 8 feet tall, maybe more, covered in dark, matted hair that hung down like old rags. Its arms were too long, its shoulders too wide. But the worst part, the part that made me want to scream, was its face. It was Tommy's face. Not exactly. Like someone had taken Tommy's face and stretched it over something that wasn't human. His blue eyes, but too big. His smile, but with too many teeth. His voice, but coming from a throat that wasn't right. "There you are, Mike," it said, and Tommy's voice came out of that wrong mouth. "I've been looking for you." I tried to speak, but no words came out. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't work. The thing that looked like Tommy stepped closer. With each step, the ground shook a little. Leaves fell from the trees around us. "Do you remember that day, Mike?" it asked. "The day you let me die?" "You're not real," I whispered. "You're not Tommy. Tommy's dead. I'm dead because of you." The creature's face twisted into something that might have been sadness or anger. "I called for help. I screamed your name, and you just hid behind that rock like a scared little boy." I closed my eyes tight, but I could still hear its voice, still smell that awful mix of pine trees and Korean dirt and old blood. "Look at me, Mike." I opened my eyes. The creature was right in front of me now, close enough to touch, close enough to see that its eyes weren't quite right. They moved too much, like there was something swimming behind them. I was 23 years old, it said. I was going to marry Sarah when I got home. Did you know that? We were going to have kids. I was going to be a teacher, help children learn to read. My heart felt like it was breaking all over again. Tommy, I'm sorry. I was scared. I wanted to help you, but I couldn't move. But you did move, didn't you, Mike? The creature leaned closer. After I died, you moved just fine. You crawled over to my body. You took my dog tags. You held my hand and cried. I nodded, tears running down my face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back my life. The creature's voice got louder, angrier. Sorry doesn't give me Sarah or kids or growing old. You got to live my life, Mike. You got 35 years that belong to me. I pulled out my rifle and pointed it at the creature. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold it. Go ahead, it said. Shoot me. Maybe this time you'll pull the trigger. I fired. The bullet went right through the creature like it was made of smoke. It didn't even flinch. You can't kill guilt with bullets, Mike, it said, and laughed with Tommy's voice. You can't shoot what's inside your own head. The creature started walking toward me again. With each step, it got bigger, taller, more wrong. Come on, Mike. We're going for a walk. There's something I want to show you. I backed away, but my feet hit something solid, a cliff. I turned around and looked down. It was a long drop, maybe 100 feet, onto sharp rocks below. Just like the cliff in Korea where everything went wrong. Recognize this place? The creature asked. This is where cowards belong, Mike. At the bottom of cliffs, broken and forgotten. I looked back at the thing with Tommy's face. For just a second, the anger melted away, and I saw my friend again. My real friend. The one who protected me when we were kids. I'm not angry, Mike, Tommy's voice said, soft and sad. I'm just tired. Tired of watching you pretend I'm still alive. Tired of coffee and sandwiches and conversations with a dead man. It's time to let me go. I can't, I whispered. If I let you go, then I'm alone. Then I have to live with what I did. You're already alone, Mike. You've been alone for 12 years, and other people are getting hurt because you won't face the truth. What do you mean? The creature pointed behind me, toward the woods. 3 hikers have gone missing in these woods this month. A family with 2 kids got lost last week. They're still out there somewhere. This thing you created, this guilt monster, it's not just hunting you anymore. My blood went cold. No, that's not true. It is true, and it'll keep hurting people until you do what you should have done 12 years ago. I looked over the cliff again. The rocks below looked sharp and final. You want me to jump? I want you to choose, Mike. For once in your life, I want you to choose to be brave instead of being a coward. The creature stepped closer to the edge, to me. What's it going to be, Mike? Are you going to run away again? Or are you finally going to do something about this? I stood at the edge of that cliff for what felt like hours. The creature, with Tommy's face, waited. Patiently, like it had all the time in the world. Maybe it did. The wind picked up, making the trees whisper around us. Far below, I could see the sharp rocks waiting. It would be easy. One step forward, and all the guilt would be over. All the nightmares would stop. No more conversations with a dead man. No more checking my compass every 5 minutes. No more waking up in cold sweats, hearing Tommy scream my name. That's what you want, isn't it? I said to the creature. You want me to jump. You want me to die like a coward, just like I live like one. The creature tilted its head. For a moment, Tommy's real face showed through the monster mask. My friend's face, the way he looked when we were kids, and he was trying to figure out a hard math problem. I don't want you to die, Mike, it said, and its voice was gentler now, more like the real Tommy. I want you to live. But I want you to live with the truth, not with lies and make-believe. The truth is that I'm a coward. The truth is that I let my best friend die. No, Mike, that's only part of the truth. I looked at the creature confused. What do you mean? The truth is that you were scared. 23 years old in your first real battle and you froze up. That happens to soldiers, Mike. Good soldiers. Brave soldiers. It doesn't make you a monster. But I didn't save you. You couldn't save me. I was already hit before you could have done anything. The doctors told you that after the battle, remember? I was dead before you could have reached me. I did remember. The army doctor had said Tommy's wounds were too bad, that nothing could have saved him. But I'd never believed it. I'd always thought that if I'd been braver, if I'd moved faster, maybe... You've been punishing yourself for 12 years for something that wasn't your fault, the creature said. And now that punishment is hurting other people, innocent people. I thought about the missing hikers, the lost family with kids. How do I stop it? You know how. I looked down at my rifle, then at the creature, then at the cliff. I have to choose, I said slowly. I can jump and die a coward, or I can face what I really am. What are you, Mike? I took a deep breath. The smell of Korea was fading, replaced by pine trees and clean mountain air. I'm a man who tried his best in an impossible situation. I'm a man who loved his friend and misses him every day. I'm a man who's been running from the truth for 12 years. The creature smiled, and this time it was Tommy's real smile. And I'm a man who's going to stop running. I raised my rifle, not at the creature, but at myself. If I was going to die, it wouldn't be by jumping like a coward. It would be by choosing to end the cycle, by finally pulling a trigger when it mattered. Goodbye, Tommy, I said. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for protecting me all those years. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you back. You did protect me, Mike, the creature said, and its voice was fading now, becoming more like an echo. You kept me alive in your heart for 12 years, but it's time to let me rest. I closed my eyes and pulled the trigger. The sound echoed through the forest, scaring birds from their trees. When the echo faded, everything was quiet, peaceful. I opened my eyes. The creature was gone. The cliff was gone. I was lying on the ground by our stream, next to the flat rock where I always set our coffee cups. My rifle was beside me, empty. There was no pain, just a spreading warmth and a feeling like I was finally tired enough to sleep. The forest was alive again. Birds sang, squirrels chattered, the stream laughed as it ran over the stones. Mike? I turned my head. Tommy was sitting on the rock holding his coffee cup. Not the monster version, the real Tommy. Young and whole and smiling. You did good, buddy, he said. You finally fought back. Am I dead? Yeah, but it's okay. You're not alone anymore. I smiled. For the first time in 12 years, I felt peace. Can we go home now? We can go home. 2 days later, another ranger found my body by the stream. I was lying peaceful, with a smile on my face. Next to me were 2 coffee cups, both empty. The ranger said it looked like I'd been having coffee with a friend. The missing hikers were found safe that same day. They walked out of the woods on their own, saying they'd suddenly remembered the way home. The lost family with kids showed up at the ranger station, confused but unharmed. The woods went back to being just woods, beautiful and peaceful and safe. And sometimes hikers say they see 2 men walking the trails together, one tall, one short, both smiling, both finally at peace. They say if you listen close, you can hear them talking and laughing like old friends do. And they say the forest feels safer when they're around, like someone's watching out for people who might get lost. Some stories end with monsters being killed, but the best stories end with monsters being forgiven and friends finding their way home. My name is Jake Williams, and I'm 39 years old. I work as a park ranger here in the Okefenokee Swamp in Georgia. Today, I'm taking my small boat through the dark water, just like I did when I was a kid with my grandfather. The water is calm and black as coffee. My wooden pole pushes through it easy, making little ripples that spread out and disappear. Above me, the Spanish moss hangs down from the big cypress trees like an old man's beard. When I was 7, grandfather and I used to climb these same trees. He'd boost me up to the first branch, and I'd scramble up like a monkey. "See that heron over there, Jake?" I can almost hear his voice now. There's a great blue heron standing in the shallow water, not moving at all, just watching, waiting. That bird reminds me so much of grandfather, patient and wise, like he could see things the rest of us couldn't. I take a deep breath. The swamp smells exactly like it did back then. Thick mud, green plants, and something else. Something old and mysterious that I never could put my finger on. Grandfather used to say it was the smell of ancient wisdom. "This place has been here longer than people, Jake," he'd tell me. "It knows things. I'm heading to the sacred island today." That's what grandfather always called it. It's a small piece of dry land deep in the swamp where he's buried now. The boat moves slow through the water channels, past the places where we used to fish together. He taught me which spots had the best base, where the turtles like to sun themselves, and how to read the water like a book. Some turtles slide off a log as I pass by. They disappear under the dark water so fast, like they're hiding from something. Maybe they're hiding like I've been hiding, from the truth, from what I did. I brought flowers today, white lilies from the store in town. They look too clean and bright in this wild place. Too little, too late, I think. But I brought them anyway. When I reach the island, I tie my boat to an old cypress root and step onto the muddy shore. Grandfather's grave is simple, just a wooden cross I made and some stones in a circle, the way he wanted it, natural, part of the swamp. I kneel down and place the flowers by the cross. "Hey, grandfather," I say out loud, "I'm sorry I haven't been here in a while." The water around the island is so still it looks like a black mirror. When I look down, I see my face looking back at me, but for just a second, I swear I see his face instead, those sad, disappointed eyes that I remember from his last days. An alligator floats about 20 feet away, just its eyes and nose above water, watching me. In this swamp, the gators are like guards. They see everything, remember everything, and they know what I did. The air feels different today, heavy, like a storm is coming, but the sky is clear. The water starts to bubble a little near the shore, and I smell something that makes my stomach turn. It's not the normal swamp smell. This smells like broken promises and guilt and shame all mixed together. I remember the last time I talked to grandfather, really talked to him. He was dying in his hospital bed, machines beeping all around him. His hands were cold and thin, but they still held mine tight. "Jake," he whispered, his voice weak but serious, "you have to promise me something." I leaned closer. His breath smelled like medicine and sadness. "The sacred land, the island where my people are buried. You can't let anyone hurt it, ever." He was talking about a bigger piece of land, not just where he's buried now, but a whole area about 5 miles south of here. It had old graves, bones that were hundreds of years old, Native American burial grounds that his family had protected for generations. "This land has spirits, Jake. They trust our family to keep them safe." His grip got tighter. "Promise me." "I promise, grandfather," I said. And I meant it, I really did. But that was before Emma got sick. Emma is my daughter. She was only 8 when the doctors found the cancer. 8 years old and fighting for her life. The medical bills started, piling up like snow in winter. Insurance didn't cover everything, not even close. I worked extra shifts as a ranger, took on weekend jobs, sold everything I could. But it wasn't enough. The bills kept coming. 50,000, then 100,000, then more. Emma needed surgery, special medicine, treatments that cost more money than I'd ever seen. That's when the developers came knocking. "Mr. Williams," the man in the expensive suit said, We know you own that land south of the swamp. We're prepared to make you a very good offer. They wanted to drain the wetland and build condos, vacation homes for rich people from Atlanta. They offered me $200,000 cash. I said no at first. I remembered my promise to grandfather. But then Emma got worse. The doctor said she needed to go to a special hospital in Atlanta. More surgery, more medicine, more bills. I couldn't sleep. I'd sit by Emma's bed watching her little chest go up and down and think about that money. $200,000 could save her life. One night, Emma looked at me with those big brown eyes, grandfather's eyes, and whispered, "Daddy, am I going to die?" I signed the papers the next morning. The construction crews came 2 weeks later, big machines that looked like metal monsters. They drained the water first, pumping it out into trucks. Then they started digging. That's when they found the bones. Old bones, ancient graves, pieces of pottery and tools that were older than anyone could remember. The workers just covered them up with dirt and kept building. The foreman paid them extra to keep quiet about it. I used the money to save Emma. The treatments worked. She got better. But every night I'd wake up hearing bulldozers in my dreams. I became a park ranger after that, trying to protect what was left of the swamp. Like that could make up for what I'd done, like guarding the remaining wetland could heal the wound I'd made. But guilt doesn't go away that easy. It sits in your chest like a stone, heavy and cold. I still carry a piece of the sacred land with me, a small stone I found before the developers came. It's in my pocket right now, and lately it's been getting warm, hot even, like it's trying to tell me something. The swamp knows what I did. I can feel it in the way the water moves, in the way the animals look at me. Even the air feels different. Now angry. The stone in my pocket is burning hot now. I pull it out and look at it. It's just a regular piece of rock, grey and smooth, but it feels like it's been sitting in a fire. I'm about to put it back when I hear something splash behind me. Not a small splash like a fish jumping. Something big. I turn around, but there's nothing there, just the dark water and the cypress trees. But the water is moving in circles, like something big just went under. My hands are shaking a little as I get back in my boat. The air smells wrong now, not like the normal swamp smell. This is thick and nasty, like something rotting, like death. I start poling back toward the ranger station, but the boat feels heavy, like something is holding it back. Each push with the pole is harder than it should be. The water that was smooth as glass before is now choppy and restless. That's when I see my research equipment. I had left some water testing gear on a platform, about a mile from here yesterday. Now it's covered in green slime, thick nasty stuff that drips down like snot. The smell coming from it makes me want to throw up. I've worked in this swamp for 5 years. I know what normal algae looks like. This isn't normal. The water around the platform is bubbling, not like it's boiling, but like something underneath is breathing. Big, slow breaths that make the water rise and fall. I grab my radio to call back to the station. Base, this is Jake. I'm seeing some weird stuff out here by Research Platform 3. Static comes back at first. Then I hear a voice, but it's not dispatch. You broke your promise, boy. It's grandfather's voice, clear as day. But that's impossible. He's been dead for 3 years. I drop the radio. It hits the bottom of the boat with a loud crack. Something moves in the water near the platform, something big. I see ripples spreading out in a circle about 10 feet wide. Whatever made those ripples is huge. Then I see the handprint. It's pressed into the mud at the edge of the platform, but it's not a human handprint. It's too big, maybe twice the size of my hand. The fingers are long and thick, with marks where claws dug into the mud. The sacred stone in my pocket is so hot now it's burning my leg through my pants. I pull it out and almost drop it. The grey rock is glowing, not bright like a light bulb, but soft and strange, like moonlight. All around me, the normal sounds of the swamp are gone. No birds singing, no frogs croaking, no insects buzzing. Even the wind has stopped. It's so quiet I can hear my own heartbeat. Then the smell hits me again. Stronger this time, like a hospital room mixed with rotting plants. It makes me think of Emma when she was sick, lying in that white bed with tubes in her arms. But there's something else in the smell, something that makes my skin crawl. It smells like guilt, like shame, like all the nights I couldn't sleep because of what I'd done. Green gas starts rising from the water where the bubbles were. It moves like fog, but it's too thick, too green. It reaches toward my boat like fingers trying to grab me. I try to pole away faster, but something bumps the bottom of my boat, hard. The whole boat rocks, and I almost fall in. I look down into the dark water, trying to see what's under there. For just a second, I think I see eyes, big yellow eyes looking right up at me. But when I blink, they're gone. My boat won't move forward anymore. Every time I push. With the pole, it feels like I'm pushing against a wall. Something under the water has grabbed hold of my boat and won't let go. The green gas is getting thicker, forming shapes in the air. For a moment, it looks like faces. Angry faces with empty eyes. The faces of the spirits whose graves got dug up and covered with concrete. I know they're coming for me. I can feel it in my bones, in the burning stone, in the way the swamp has gone completely silent. The water explodes. Something huge breaks. The surface right next to my boat, sending waves that nearly tip me over. Water splashes everywhere, and I'm soaked in seconds. When the water settles, I see it. It's standing in the shallow water about 15 feet away, taller than any man, covered in dark fur that drips with green slime. Its arms are long and thick, hanging down to its knees, but it's the face that makes my blood freeze. The eyes. Their grandfather's eyes, sad and wise and disappointed. "Hello, Jake," it says, and the voice is grandfather's voice too, but deeper, scarier. I try to speak, but no words come out. My throat feels like it's closed up tight. The creature takes a step closer. Water sloshes around its legs. It's so big that the water only comes up to its waist, but I know it's deep there, deep enough to drown in. "You broke your promise to me, boy." Each word hits me like a punch to the chest. "Grandfather," I finally manage to whisper. "I am what's left of him, what the spirits made from his anger and sadness." The creature breathes out, and green gas flows from its mouth. The smell makes me dizzy. "You sold our ancestors for money, Jake. You let them bulldoze the graves." I want to explain about Emma, about the hospital bills, about how I had no choice. But the words won't come. The creature reaches into the water and pulls something up. Bones, old brown bones that should have stayed buried. These were children, Jake. Babies. Their mothers trusted your family to keep them safe. My hands are shaking so bad I can barely hold the pole. I had to save Emma. She was dying. "So you chose your family over theirs." The creature's voice gets louder, angrier. "You chose your blood over their blood." The green gas is getting thicker. It burns my eyes and makes my chest tight. I start coughing, and each cough tastes like metal and rot. "I'm sorry," I say, but the words sound small and weak. Sorry doesn't bring back the dead, boy. The creature starts walking toward my boat. Each step makes the water bubble and hiss. Sorry doesn't fix what you broke. I reach for my rifle. It's always in the boat for emergencies. But when I grab it, the metal starts melting in my hands. The green gas from the creature's breath is eating it away like acid. "You think weapons can help you now?" The creature laughs, but it's not a happy sound. It's the sound of wind through dead trees. "You think money can buy your way out of this?" It's right next to my boat now. Up close, I can see that its fur isn't just wet with slime. There are small bones tangled in it, pieces of pottery, little arrowheads, all the things that were buried with the ancestors now stuck to this monster. "The spirits sent me, Jake. I'm their guardian now, their protector." The creature leans down, and I smell Emma's hospital room again. Antiseptic and fear. and the sound of machines keeping people alive. They want payment for what you did. What kind of payment? The creature smiles, showing teeth like broken glass. Blood, Jake. Life for life. My boat starts moving, but I'm not poling it. The creature is pushing it deeper into the swamp, toward the dark water where the cypress trees grow thick and close together. Wait, I say, says, please, I can make this right somehow. Can you bring back the dead boy? Can you put the bones back in the ground? Can you make the concrete disappear? I can't answer because we both know I can't do any of those things. But maybe, the creature says, and its voice gets quiet and dangerous, maybe there's another way. In the distance I hear voices, young voices, laughing and talking. A group of college kids in a boat, probably here to study the wildlife. They're heading this way. The creature hears them too. Its head turns toward the sound like a dog hearing a whistle. Fresh blood, Jake. Young blood. The creature looks back at me with those eyes that are still grandfather's eyes. Their lives for yours. The spirits might accept that trade. No. The word comes out louder than I meant it to. You can't hurt them. They didn't do anything wrong. Neither did the children whose graves you sold. The creature starts moving toward the sound of the voices. But that didn't stop you, did it? Boy, I realize this is my choice. The spirits want justice, and they're going to get it one way or another. Either I pay with my life, or those innocent kids do. The voices are getting closer. I can hear them clearly now. 2 boys and a girl, talking about their school project. They sound so young, so happy. They have no idea what's waiting for them in this dark water. Please, I say to the creature, take me instead. Let them go. The creature stops moving toward the voices. It turns those sad, familiar eyes back to me. You would die for strangers, Jake? After you sold your own ancestors for money? Yes, the word comes out strong and clear. Yes, I would. Why? I think about Emma, safe at home now, healthy and laughing. I think about grandfather and his disappointed face in my dreams. I think about all the nights I couldn't sleep because of what I'd done. Because it's right, I say. Because that's what grandfather would have done, what he tried to teach me to do. The creature is quiet for a long moment. The college kids are maybe 100 yards away now. I can see their boat through the trees. I broke my promise to you, grandfather, I say, looking right into those eyes. I sold the spirit's resting place for Emma's life, but I won't let innocent people pay for my mistake. I stand up in the boat. My legs are shaking, but I stay up. I won't let their blood wash away my guilt. That's not how it works. The sacred stone in my pocket isn't burning anymore. It's warm now, like a hand holding mine. If the spirits want justice, they can have it. Take my life, but let those kids go home to their families. The creature watches me for what feels like forever. The college students are getting so close, I can hear individual words now. Something about water samples and pH levels. You understand now, the creature says, and for the first time its voice sounds gentle. You understand what honor means. I think so. Your grandfather loved you, Jake, even when you broke your promise, even when you chose your daughter over his spirits. The creature's voice is getting softer, more like the grandfather I remember. He understood why you did it, but he was sad that you stopped trying to be the man he raised you to be. Tears are running down my face now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He knows, boy. He's always known. I take the sacred stone out of my pocket. It's glowing soft and warm in my hand. Without thinking about it, I jump into the water. The green slime burns my skin like acid. The water is deeper than I thought, and I sink fast. But I'm not scared anymore. For the first time in 3 years, I feel peaceful. Thank you. I hear grandfather's real voice, not the creature's scary voice. Just him, gentle and proud. Thank you for finally remembering who you are. The water closes over my head. I can't breathe, can't swim. The sacred stone slips from my fingers and sinks into the dark. But as I drown, I hear the college kids paddling safely past, talking about their project, laughing at someone's joke. They'll go home to their families tonight. They'll never know how close they came to danger, and somehow that makes it okay. The last thing I see is light, not the green, sick light from before. Clean, white light like sunlight through water. And in that light I see Grandfather waiting for me, young again, smiling, proud. "Come on, boy," he says, "let's go home." The rangers found my body the next morning, floating peaceful near the sacred island. My face was calm, they said, like I was sleeping. Emma got a letter in the mail that same day, an anonymous donation that paid off the last of her medical bills. The money came with a note that just said, "From someone who understands about family." The college students finished their project and went back to school. They never knew what happened. And in the deepest part of the swamp, where the water is black as night and the cypress trees grow thick, the spirits rest easy now. The sacred stone glows soft at the bottom of the swamp, keeping watch. The debt is paid. The promise is kept. And sometimes on quiet mornings when the mist rises from the water, the other rangers say they can hear two voices talking and laughing together, deep in the swamp where the spirits dwell. An old man and his grandson fishing together again at peace at last. My name is Jake Williams, and I'm 39 years old. I work as a park ranger here in the Okefenokee Swamp in Georgia. Today, I'm taking my small boat through the dark. Water, just like I did when I was a kid with my grandfather. The water is calm and black as coffee. My wooden pole pushes through it easy, making little ripples that spread out and disappear. Above me, the Spanish moss hangs down from the big cypress trees like an old man's beard. When I was 7, Grandfather and I used to climb these same trees. He'd boost me up to the first branch, and I'd scramble up like a monkey. "See that heron over there, Jake?" I can almost hear his voice now. There's a great blue heron standing in the shallow water, not moving at all. Just watching, waiting. That bird reminds me so much of Grandfather, patient and wise, like he could see things the rest of us couldn't. I take a deep breath. The swamp smells exactly like it did back then. Thick mud, green plants, and something else. Something old and mysterious that I never could put my finger on. Grandfather used to say it was the smell of ancient wisdom. "This place has been here longer than people, Jake," he'd tell me. "It knows things. I'm heading to the sacred island today." That's what Grandfather always called it. It's a small piece of dry land deep in the swamp where he's buried now. The boat moves slow through the water channels, past the places where we used to fish together. He taught me which spots had the best base, where the turtles like to sun themselves, and how to read the water like a book. Some turtles slide off a log as I pass by. They disappear under the dark water so fast, like they're hiding from something. Maybe they're hiding like I've been hiding, from the truth, from what I did. I brought flowers today, white lilies from the store in town. They look too clean and bright in this wild place. Too little, too late, I think. But I brought them anyway. When I reach the island, I tie my boat to an old cypress root and step onto the muddy shore. Grandfather's grave is simple, just a wooden cross I made and some stones in a circle, the way he wanted it, natural, part of the swamp. I kneel down and place the flowers by the cross. "Hey, Grandfather," I say out loud, "I'm sorry I haven't been here in a while." The water around the island is so still, it looks like a black mirror. When I look down, I see my face looking back at me, but for just a second I swear I see his face instead. Those sad, disappointed eyes that I remember from his last days. An alligator floats about 20 feet away, just its eyes and nose above water, watching me. In this swamp, the gators are like guards. They see everything, remember everything, and they know what I did. The air feels different today, heavy, like a storm is coming, but the sky is clear. The water starts to bubble a little, near the shore, and I smell something that makes my stomach turn. It's not the normal swamp smell. This smells like broken promises and guilt and shame all mixed together. I know why I'm really here. It's not just to visit grandfather's grave. It's because something is stirring in this swamp, something angry, and I think it's coming for me. My name is Carlos Rivera, and I'm 42 years old. I work as a forest ranger now in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. But that's not what I used to be. What I used to be, well, that's a story I don't like telling. I'm driving my truck through these twisted pine trees right now, trying to forget things I can never really forget. The road is bumpy and full of gravel that crunches under my tires. These woods are supposed to be peaceful, but peace is something I don't deserve. 3 years ago, I left the city and came here. I traded my police badge for a ranger's uniform. I thought maybe if I protected trees instead of people, I couldn't mess up so bad. Trees don't trust you. Trees don't get hurt when you let them down. I parked my truck next to Mirror Lake. Families used to come here on weekends with their kids. They'd have picnics, and the children would laugh and splash in the water. But I ruined that for some families. I ruined everything for them. The birds are singing their evening songs. They sound so innocent and pure. Not like the sounds I remember from the city. Not like the screaming. Especially not like little Elena Martinez screaming for help while I did nothing. I reach into my pocket and pull out a photo. It's old and worn because I look at it every day. It's from a newspaper. The Martinez family is at a church picnic, all smiling. Rico Martinez has his arm around his wife Maria, and there's Elena, their 8-year-old daughter, grinning like kids do when they think the world is safe. The air smells like pine trees. It should smell clean and good. But today something's different. Today it smells like smoke, like burning houses, like the night everything went wrong and I could have stopped it but didn't. I start walking on the trail, counting my steps. 1, 2, 3. I used to count money like this. Dirty money that I took when I was supposed to be protecting people. Each step reminds me of a kid I failed to save. Each step reminds me of families I let down. A little rabbit runs across the path in front of me. I reach for my gun out of habit, then stop myself. The rabbit isn't dangerous. It's not like the real monsters I used to know. The monsters who looked like regular people but did terrible things to children. My gun feels different now. It's supposed to protect people, not scare them. But back, then I was the one people should have been scared of. The air is getting warmer, even though the sun isn't setting yet. That smell of smoke is getting stronger too. Something bad is coming. After 3 years of trying to hide in these woods, I can feel it in my bones. I look at my watch. It's almost 7 o'clock. The sky should be light for another hour, but it's getting dark between the trees. The trees look like they're closing in around me, like they know what I did, and they don't want to let me escape anymore. I've been running from my past for 3 years, but I think today, my past finally caught up with me. I need to tell you what I did. I need to tell you why I'm here in these woods, hiding from something I can never really escape. I used to be a police officer in Newark. Officer Rivera, they called me. I worked the East Ward, where bad things happened every day and good people tried to survive. It was my job to protect those people, to keep their children safe. But I didn't do my job. It started small. A man in a nice suit approached me one day. He said his name was Tommy. He had kind eyes and spoke softly, like someone's grandfather. "Officer Rivera," he said, "you work hard. You deserve more than what the city pays you." He handed me an envelope. Inside was $100. Cash. "I just need you to drive a different route on Tuesdays," he said. "Nothing bad, just take a different street for an hour." I should have said no. I should have arrested him. But I thought about my own kids and how they needed new shoes. How my wife worked 2 jobs and still worried about paying rent. $100 would help, just this once. But it wasn't just once. Every week, Tommy gave me more money. Every week, he asked me to look the other way, to be somewhere else. When certain cars drove through the neighborhood, to forget what I saw when men sold things to teenagers. I told myself I was being smart. The bad guys were going to do bad things anyway, right? At least this way, my family was safe. My kids could have nice things. $500 a week, sometimes more. Enough to move my family to a better neighborhood. Enough to sleep at night in a house far away from the streets I was supposed to protect. Rico Martinez lived on those streets. He was a good man who worked at the car factory and coached little kids baseball on weekends. He came to see me because drug dealers were selling to children right across from his daughter's school. "Officer Rivera," he said, sitting in my office with his hat in his hands, "please help us. These men are hurting our kids. Elena is scared to walk to school." I looked at Rico's worried face and I promised to help. I took his report and filed it in my desk drawer. That night I met Tommy at our usual place and told him about Rico's complaint. "Don't worry about Martinez," I said, counting the money Tommy gave me. "I'll handle it." I handled it by doing nothing. Week after week, Rico came back. He brought pictures of kids buying drugs. He brought names and license plate numbers. He begged me to arrest somebody, anybody. Week after week, I took Tommy's money and lied to Rico's face. The end came on a Tuesday in October. Elena Martinez was walking home from school, like always. She was 8 years old and carried a backpack with frozen characters on it. She probably hummed songs and thought about homework and what her mom was making for dinner. Two groups of bad men started shooting at each other right there on the street. Elena got caught in the middle. She fell down on the sidewalk and never got up again. Rico came to me crying. His little girl was dead, and he wanted to know why I hadn't stopped the men who killed her. I didn't have an answer. How could I tell him that I knew those men, that they paid me to leave them alone, that his daughter died because I chose money over her life? Rico got angry. He started asking questions around the neighborhood. He said he was going to the newspapers. He was going to tell everyone that the police weren't doing their job. 3 days later, the Martinez house burned down in the middle of the night. Rico, his wife Maria, and what was left of little Elena all died together. I knew who set that fire. I could have stopped it with one phone call. Instead, I drove to the other side of town and waited for it to be over. The fire department said it was an electrical problem, bad wiring, just an accident. Tommy gave me an extra $1,000 that week. "For your pain and suffering," he said. I quit the police force the next day and came here to the Pine Barrens. For 3 years, I've been sending money to other families hurt by the men I protected. Anonymous envelopes with no return address, like blood money could bring back the dead. But Elena Martinez still visits me in my dreams. She asks me the same question every night. "Officer Rivera, why didn't you save us?" And now, walking through these dark woods with that smell of smoke getting stronger, I think I'm finally going to have to answer her. I keep walking deeper into the woods, following the smell of smoke. My radio is quiet on my belt. Usually, dispatch calls me every hour to check in. But today there's nothing, just silence and the sound of my boots on dead leaves. The trail leads me to a campsite I know well. College kids from Princeton come here on weekends. They set up tents and make campfires and tell scary stories. I always check on them during my evening rounds to make sure they're being safe. But something's wrong today. The campsite is burned, not just burned, destroyed. 3 tents are nothing but perfect. Circles of ash on the ground. The metal fire pit in the middle looks like it melted. I've never seen metal melt like that, not even in house fires. I walk closer and see something that makes my blood turn cold. 4 cell phones are scattered around the burned area. They should be melted too, but they're not. They're glowing. All 4 screens show the same thing, a picture of the front desk at my old police station in Newark. The same desk where I used to sit and lie to people like Rico Martinez. My hands start shaking. The trees around the campsite have strange marks burned into their bark. They look like dollar signs, perfect dollar signs, like someone used a branding iron. But who would do that? And how? I circle the burned area and find footprints in the dirt, but they're not human footprints. They're too big, too deep. They look like hooves, like some kind of animal was here. A big animal. The prints go around and around the campsite, in a perfect circle. Like something was hunting, like something was waiting. My radio crackles to life, but instead of dispatch I hear singing. A little girl's voice singing a nursery rhyme. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies. It's Elena's voice. I know it's Elena. I heard her sing that song the day before she died, when I drove past her school and saw her playing at recess. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. I grab the radio and turn it off, but the singing doesn't stop. It's coming from the trees now, from everywhere and nowhere. Officer Rivera, the voice calls from deeper in the woods. Officer Rivera, why didn't you save us? I start running toward the voice. I crash through bushes and branches, not caring about the scratches on my face. Behind me, I hear a sound like a campfire starting up. When I look back, the burned campsite is on fire again, but there's nothing left to burn. The flames are blue and orange, and they reach up toward the sky like hands trying to grab something. The smoke smells like burning money and melted plastic and something else, something sweet and terrible that reminds me of the night the Martinez house burned. I run faster. The voice keeps calling me, leading me deeper into parts of the forest I've never seen before. My flashlight flickers and dies. The batteries are new, but the light just stops working. Then I see it. In a clearing ahead of me, there's a huge dead tree. Its branches stick up like broken fingers against the dark sky, and sitting on the biggest branch is something that shouldn't exist. It's big as a car and has wings like a bat. Its body looks like a horse, but wrong. All muscle and sharp edges. It has claws that could tear a man in half, and eyes that glow red in the darkness. But it's the face that stops my heart. It's Elena's face, sweet little Elena Martinez, looking down at me from this monster's head. When she speaks, it's with the voice of an 8-year-old girl asking her daddy for a bedtime story. "Hello, Officer Rivera," she says. "I've been waiting for you." The thing spreads its wings, and I see pictures burned into the skin between the bones. Pictures of me taking money from Tommy. Pictures of Rico begging me for help. Pictures of Elena, lying on the sidewalk, with her frozen backpack still on her shoulders. My gun is heavy on my hip, but when I try to draw it, the metal is too hot to touch. The handle has melted into the shape of a $sign. "You can't fight me with dirty money," Elena says from the monster's mouth. "You should know that by now." I fall to my knees in the dirt. After 3 years of running, after 3 years of trying to forget, my past has finally found me, and it looks like a little girl who trusted me to keep her safe. "What do you want?" I whisper. The creature smiles with too many teeth. "The same thing you wanted, Officer Rivera. I want you to look the other way." The monster jumps down from the tree and lands right in front of me. When it hits the ground, the earth cracks in lines that spell out numbers. All the amounts of money I took. Over the years, $100, $250, $500. Each number glows like fire in the dirt. "I was 8 years old," Elena's voice says from the creature's mouth. "I still believed police officers were heroes. I thought you would save me." The thing walks around me in a slow circle. Its hooves leave burning marks in the ground. I can feel the heat from its body, but it's not normal heat. It's the kind of heat that comes from shame and guilt burning inside your chest. "Do you know what it's like to die scared?" Elena asks. "To call for help and have nobody come?" I try to speak, but my throat is too dry. Finally, I manage to whisper, "I know." "Do you?" The creature stops walking and stares at me with Elena's brown eyes. "Because you've been playing pretend for 3 years. Pretending to be a good guy now. Pretending that sending money to dead people's families makes up for what you did. The monster is right. I have been pretending, telling myself that being a forest ranger made me different, that protecting trees somehow balanced out failing to protect children. "What do you want from me?" I ask again. The creature turns its head toward the edge of the clearing. I can hear voices coming through the trees. Young voices, teenagers, probably lost hikers trying to find their way back to the main trail. "I want the same thing Tommy wanted," Elena says. "I want you to walk away. Let me have them." The voices are getting closer. I can see flashlight beams moving between the trees. 3 or 4 kids, maybe college age. They're probably scared and cold and just want to get back to their car. "If you do this one little thing for me," the creature continues, "I'll make you rich. Richer than Tommy ever did. All the money you could ever want. All the power. All the respect." For just a second I feel it. The old temptation, the easy way out. Just walk away and let someone else deal with the problem. Just like I always did. But then I really look at Elena's face on this monster. Under all the anger and fire, she looks sad, disappointed, like a kid who found out her favorite superhero was just wearing a costume. "I failed you, Elena," I say, getting back on my feet. "I chose money over your life. I can't change that. I can't bring you back or save your family or make any of it right." The creature's smile fades. For just a moment it looks more like a scared little girl than a monster. "But I won't fail anyone else," I continue. I start walking toward the voices, toward the lost teenagers who need help. "I won't take any more dirty money. Not from Tommy, not from you, not from anyone." The monster roars behind me. The sound is like a train crash mixed with a crying child. Fire shoots out of its mouth, and I feel the heat hit my back like a physical punch, but I keep walking. For the first time in 5 years, I feel like a real police officer again. Not the dirty cop who sold children's lives for shopping money, but the man who joined the force to help people. "Stay back!" I yell to the kids coming through the trees. "There's danger here! Get away!" The fire is all around me now, but something strange is happening. The flames aren't trying to hurt the teenagers. They're forming a wall between the monster and the kids. Like the creature doesn't really want to hurt them. Like it just wants to test me. "You can't save them," Elena's voice calls through the fire. "You're not a hero, Carlos. You're just a dirty cop who got scared." The flames are burning my clothes now, melting my ranger badge against my chest. But I keep crawling toward the voices, toward the frightened kids who need someone to protect them. "Maybe you're right," I call back, "but I'm the only cop these kids have right now." The fire starts to change. The angry red flames turn softer, warmer, and through the light I see Elena as she really was. Not the monster's face, but the real 8-year-old girl who died believing in heroes. "Thank you," she says, and her voice sounds peaceful now. "Thank you for finally being a real police officer." The flames feel gentle now, like a warm hug. As everything goes dark, I hear the college kids on their phones calling for help. Their voices sound strong and brave. They're safe. For the first time in my whole career, I actually protected and served. I wake up in darkness, but it's not scary darkness. It's peaceful, like sleeping in on a Saturday morning when you don't have anywhere to be. I can hear the college kids talking nearby. Their voices sound calm now, not scared anymore. One of them is on the phone with 911, giving directions to our location. They found me lying in the clearing, and they're trying to help. "There's a ranger here," a girl's voice says. "He's breathing, but he won't wake up. His badge it's melted to his shirt, but he doesn't look burned." I try to open my eyes, but I'm too tired. The fire didn't hurt me the way I thought it would. Instead of burning me up, it burned away all the bad stuff I'd been carrying around for 5 years. The guilt, the shame, the dirty money, all of it just gone. Sir, can you hear me?" A young man's voice, probably one of the hikers. "Help is coming. You're going to be okay." I want to tell him I'm already okay, better than okay. For the first time since Elena died, I feel clean inside. But my voice won't work, so I just listen. The paramedics arrive 20 minutes later. I can hear their radios and their heavy boots running through the forest. They check my pulse and my breathing and load me onto a stretcher. "Vital signs are stable," one of them says. "Looks like smoke inhalation, but no burns. Lucky guy." Lucky, that's one way to put it. They carry me out of the woods to the ambulance. As we drive away, I manage to open my eyes just enough to look back at the forest. The trees look normal again, peaceful. The Jersey Devil is gone, and so is the anger it carried. At the hospital, they run tests and ask me questions I can't really answer. How do you tell a doctor that a monster made of your own guilt tried to kill you, then forgave you instead? They keep me for observation overnight. When I finally wake up the next morning, there's a newspaper on the bedside table. The headline makes me smile. "Forest Ranger saves lost hikers in Pine Barrens." The story talks about how I found 4 college students who got separated from their campsite and led them to safety before collapsing from smoke inhalation. The kids told reporters I was a hero who risked his life to protect them. Hero, I've never been called that before. A week later, I'm back at work. My supervisor wants to give me a medal for bravery, but I tell him I was just doing my job. For once, that's actually true. The college kids send me a card with all their signatures. "Thank you for saving us," it says. "You're our hero." But the best part comes later that night, when I'm walking my evening patrol through the same woods where everything happened. The air smells like pine trees again, clean and fresh. No more smoke, no more burning. I stop by the clearing where I met the creature. There's no sign of what happened there. No burned ground, no claw marks, no melted metal, just trees and grass and a sky full of stars. But as I'm about to leave, I hear something that makes me stop. Laughter. A little girl's laughter. Light and happy and free. Elena's laughter. I look around but don't see anything. Just the sound of a child who isn't angry anymore. A child who finally got the hero she deserved, even if it took him 5 years to remember how to be one. I pull out the old newspaper photo I've carried for so long. Elena Martinez, smiling at a church picnic with her parents. But now when I look at it, I don't feel guilt. I feel something I haven't felt in years, peace. I put the photo back in my pocket, but not because I'm trying to forget. I'm keeping it to remember that being a real police officer or a real forest ranger means protecting people, not failing them. The Pine Barrens are quiet tonight. The Jersey Devil that haunted these woods for 3 centuries is finally at rest, and so am I. My name is Carlos Rivera. I'm 42 years old, and for the first time in my life, I'm proud of the badge I wear. I failed Elena Martinez once, but I won't fail anyone else. Not ever again. The end. The winter morning stretched before Mike Johnson like a blank page, pristine and promising. Snow crunched beneath his cross-country skis as he glided through the boundary waters, following a trail of small footprints that seemed to dance through the Minnesota wilderness. The prints were delicate, child-sized, pressed deep into the snow as if their makers had been running or playing. Mike adjusted his medical pack and pushed forward. Even in retirement from his paramedic duties, he couldn't ignore a call for help. And those footprints leading away from what looked like an old accident site definitely suggested children in distress. The forest around him held an almost supernatural quiet. No bird songs, no rustling of small animals, just the whisper of his skis through powder and the steady rhythm of his breathing. The cold bit at his cheeks, but Mike welcomed it. Cold preserved things. Cold kept things from getting worse. His radio crackled to life, cutting through the silence. Through the static He heard his own voice, younger, more confident, more hopeful than the voice he carried now. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47. I've got multiple pediatric victims at the scene, requesting immediate backup and transport." Mike stopped skiing so abruptly he nearly fell. That call was from 3 years ago. The radio shouldn't even be picking up old transmissions. But there it was, his own voice from the Thompson family. Crash, the one that had changed everything. "Beginning CPR on the youngest victim," his radio self continued. "Come on, sweetheart, stay with me." The static grew louder, then formed words that made Mike's blood freeze. "Let us in, Daddy." He fumbled for the radio, but before he could switch it off, the transmission faded. The forest fell silent again, except for the sound of his own ragged breathing. Mike had come to the Boundary Waters because he loved winter. The season had always calmed him with its clean lines and honest cold. After losing his license, after the drinking, the mistakes, the guilt, he'd needed somewhere pure, somewhere that preserved things instead of letting them rot. But as he looked at those small footprints leading deeper into the woods, he realized something was wrong. The tracks were too perfect, too clear. In weather like this, wind should have softened them, filled them with drift. These looked fresh, like they'd been made minutes ago, and they were getting smaller. Mike blinked, certain his eyes were playing tricks. But no, as the trail wound deeper into the forest, the footprints gradually diminished in size. It was as if the children who made them were aging backward, getting younger with each step. He followed anyway. What else could he do? Children were in trouble. It didn't matter that he was no longer officially qualified to help. Some instincts ran deeper than credentials. The trail led him to a clearing where the snow had melted in a perfect circle, revealing dark earth beneath. The contrast was jarring. Bitter cold everywhere except this one spot, which felt warm enough to be spring. Mike knelt and touched the ground. It wasn't just warm, it was hot, as if something underneath was generating heat. Or someone. He'd chosen this isolation for a reason. After everything that had happened, after the investigations and the hearings and the looks of disappointment, Mike had needed to be alone. But standing in that warm circle, he realized he'd never truly been alone. Not for 3 years. A blue jay landed on his medical pack, cocking its head to look at him with one bright eye. When it opened its beak, Mike expected a harsh call. Instead, it spoke in a child's voice. "Dr. Mike, why didn't you save us?" Mike stumbled backward, his skis tangling. The jay flew away, but its words echoed in the clearing. Dr. Mike. He'd never been a doctor, he'd been a paramedic, and barely a good one toward the end. But the children had always called him Dr. Mike, believing he could do more than he ever could. The weather was turning. Dark clouds gathered overhead with unnatural speed, and the wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of something Mike couldn't identify. Not pine, not snow, but something medical, antiseptic, blood, the smell of an emergency room at 3 a.m. Mike's skis began to stick in the snow, making progress difficult. Looking down, he saw why. The snow wasn't pure white anymore. It was mixed, with something that glittered, glass maybe, and darker patches that looked disturbingly like. He shook his head. Trauma did things to your perception. He'd learned that in his training. The mind saw what it expected to see, especially when guilt was involved, but the smell was getting stronger, and somewhere in the wind he could swear he heard children laughing. 7 distinct voices, getting higher and younger with each passing moment. Mike had a creeping feeling that something was following him. He'd felt it for 3 years now, ever since that night. The sensation of being watched, of being needed, of being called to task for things he couldn't change. He turned to look behind him, but saw only his own ski tracks cutting through the snow. Yet as he stared, the tracks seemed to rearrange themselves, forming letters in the snow, Murderer, Mike blinked hard, and when he looked again, they were just tracks, straight lines leading back the way he'd come. But the children's laughter was getting closer. Michael Johnson had been 31 when his world ended, though he looked older now after 3 years of carrying the weight. His kind blue eyes had developed a haunted quality that no amount of wilderness solitude could erase. He'd been a good paramedic once, maybe not the best, but dedicated. His colleagues had respected him, trusted him with the difficult calls. The drinking had started small, just a beer after particularly rough shifts. Then it was a flask in his locker. Then it was a necessity just to get through the day. By the time of the Thompson family crash, Mike had been barely functional, though he'd hidden it well enough to keep his job. The call had come in during a blizzard. 7 children, ages 2 to 12, in a van that had hit black ice on a rural highway. Mike had been first on scene, alone in his ambulance with no backup for 30 minutes. 30 minutes that had changed everything. He'd saved none of them. The official report had been kinder than the truth. Equipment failure, impossible conditions, tragic circumstances beyond anyone's control. But Mike knew better. He'd been too drunk to think clearly, too shaky to perform basic procedures. He'd watched 7 children die while he fumbled with equipment he could normally operate in his sleep. The guilt had consumed him. He'd lost his license not through official action, but because he'd thrown it away himself, unable to face another emergency call. He'd retreated to the boundary waters, using his savings to buy a small cabin where he could disappear from the world that no longer trusted him with its most precious cargo. But solitude hadn't brought peace. If anything, it had made things worse. His companion through these 3 years had been Rex, a German shepherd mix he'd rescued from a shelter. Rex was loyal, uncomplaining, and asked no questions about Mike's past. The dog had been his anchor to sanity, his reminder that some relationships could still be pure. Rex bounded ahead now, following the mysterious trail of footprints. But something was wrong with the dog's behavior. Rex kept looking back at Mike with an expression that seemed almost accusing. "What is it, boy?" Mike called, but Rex just whined and continued forward. Mike touched the silver cross that hung around his neck. It had belonged to Emma Thompson, the youngest victim from that night. 2 years old, blonde curls, blue eyes that had looked at him with complete trust even as she lay dying. He'd taken the cross from her tiny hand, telling himself it was for safekeeping, to return to her parents. But he'd never returned it. Instead, he wore it as penance, letting it burn against his skin in the cold. The cross was burning now, though Mike couldn't tell if it was from the cold or something else. He knew this forest better than most. 3 years of wandering had taught him every trail, every hiding spot, every place where a man could disappear when the world became too much to bear. But today, the familiar paths seemed different, wrong somehow. The trees were too symmetrical, arranged in patterns that looked almost medical, like the layout of a hospital ward, and the shadows they cast looked disturbingly like gurneys and IV poles. Mike's greatest weakness had always been his need to save people. It was what had drawn him to emergency medicine in the first place. The rush of being needed, of making a difference, of being the hero who arrived just in time. But after the Thompson crash, that need had become a torment. He couldn't save anyone anymore, but he couldn't stop trying. Today felt different from his usual wanderings. There was purpose in his steps, urgency in his movements. It was as if he was responding to a call, racing toward an emergency that had already happened. But that was impossible. He'd left his radio, on just in case. Old habits died hard. But there hadn't been any calls, not for him, not anymore. Rex had stopped ahead, standing rigid in the snow. His hackles were raised, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. Mike caught up to find the dog staring at something in the trees. 7 small figures stood in the shadows between the pines. Children, their faces pale and indistinct in the dim light They were holding hands, forming a circle around something Mike couldn't see. "Hello?" Mike called out. "Are you hurt? Are you lost?" The children didn't respond. They just stood there watching him with eyes that seemed to glow in the darkness. And they were getting smaller. As Mike watched, the children appeared to shrink, their features becoming younger and more innocent. Rex barked once, sharp and frightened, then bolted back down the trail. Mike had never seen his dog run from anything before. "Wait!" Mike shouted, but Rex was already gone. Mike was alone with the children, who had begun to move closer. Their footsteps made no sound in the snow. They walked in perfect synchronization, still holding hands, their circle tightening around Mike like a noose. And as they approached, Mike could see their faces more clearly. He recognized them, all 7 of them, the Thompson children, Emma, David, Sarah, Michael, Jennifer, Christopher, and little Anna. Unchanged from the night they died, but somehow more real than they'd ever been in life. "Dr. Mike," Emma said, her voice carrying, despite being only 2 years old. "We've been waiting for you." Mike's hands shook as he reached for his medical bag. His training kicked in, overriding the impossibility of the situation. Children in distress. That was all that mattered. "What's wrong?" he asked, kneeling in. "The snow. Where does it hurt?" The children smiled, but their smiles were wrong, too knowing, too sad. "Everything hurts," David said. He was 12, the oldest, the one who had tried to shield his siblings when the van rolled. "But you can fix it, can't you, Dr. Mike? You can make it all better." Mike opened his medical bag with trembling hands. Inside, his equipment was pristine, unused. The defibrillator paddles gleamed. The IV bags were full. The medications were all in perfect order. "I can try," he whispered, though he knew it was too late. It had been too late for 3 years. The children arranged themselves on the ground, lying in the snow as if it were a hospital bed. They closed their eyes and waited for him to begin. Treatment. Mike looked at his hands. They were steadier now than they'd been that night. He wasn't drunk, he wasn't shaking. He could do this. He could save them this time. But as he reached for the defibrillator, the children's eyes snapped open. All 14 eyes, staring at him with an expression he'd seen before. Disappointment. "You're not ready yet," Emma said sadly. "You still don't understand." The children began to fade, their forms becoming translucent. Mike lunged forward, trying to grab them, to hold them, to keep them from slipping away again. "Wait, I can help you. I can save you this time." But his hands passed through empty air. The children were gone, leaving only their footprints in the snow and the smell of smoke that seemed to come from nowhere. Mike knelt in the empty clearing, his medical bags scattered around him. The silver cross burned against his chest, and somewhere in the distance he could hear Rex barking. But the sound was wrong. It wasn't Rex's bark of greeting or play, it was Rex's bark of fear. The memories came in fragments now, sharp and cutting like broken glass. Mike couldn't tell which ones were real anymore. Had he really been a hero that night, trying desperately to save 7 children? Or had he been something else entirely? The huge footprints he'd been following led to a destroyed campsite deeper in the woods. Someone had torn through the area with methodical violence, shredding tents, scattering equipment, leaving deep gouges in the trees. The destruction was thorough and purposeful, as if someone had been trying to erase all evidence of habitation. Mike stared at the wreckage, a cold recognition creeping up his spine. This was his campsite. He'd built it himself 6 months ago, after his previous shelter had been damaged. But he couldn't remember destroying it. The gaps in his memory were getting worse. Entire days disappearing into blackness. The silence in the forest was absolute now. Not even wind stirred the branches. It was the silence of held breath, of 7 children waiting for something that would never come. Mike's equipment bag felt heavier than it should. When he opened it, his supplies were ruined. IV bags punctured, medications expired, the defibrillators, screen cracked. When had this happened? He maintained his equipment religiously, checking it every day. It was his connection to his former life, his proof that he could still help people, but the serial numbers on the machines were wrong. The manufacture dates were from 1978, 3 years before the Thompson crash. As if the equipment had been aging backward, returning to a time when it might have worked, when Mike might have made a difference. A scream cut through the silence, raw, desperate, filled with a pain that Mike recognized. It was his own voice from that night, when he'd realized what he'd done, what he'd failed to do. The sound echoed through the trees, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. Dead animals lay scattered around the ruined campsite. Rabbits, squirrels, even a young deer. Their bodies were arranged in neat rows, as if someone had been practicing medical procedures on them. Mike's hands shook as he examined them. The incisions were surgical, precise, the same techniques he'd used in his training. But he didn't remember doing this. He would never hurt innocent animals. He was a healer, not a... The word murderer formed in his mind, unbidden and unwelcome. Mike stumbled away from the campsite, his skis tangling in the debris. The trail he'd been following was gone, covered by fresh snow that had fallen while he wasn't looking. Or maybe the trail had never existed at all. Maybe he'd been following his own tracks in circles, chasing ghosts of his own making. The storm was building again. The same storm that had raged the night of the Thompson crash. Black clouds boiled overhead, and the wind carried the scent of gasoline and burning metal. Mike could taste smoke in the air, hear the distant sound of sirens that would never arrive in time. His radio crackled to life again, but this time the transmission was different, clearer, more recent. Unit 47, what's your status? The dispatcher's voice was sharp with concern. Mike's own voice answered, but it sounded wrong. Slurred, distant. Still on scene. Multiple casualties. Send backup. Copy that. How many victims? A long pause. Then 7. All children, I can't... The transmission cut to static, then silence. Mike stared at the radio in his hand. When had he last used it? When had he last been Unit 47? The answer came to him in a flash of clarity that made him sick. Never. He'd never been Unit 47. That had been someone else, someone competent, someone who might have made a difference. Mike had been Unit 23. Unit 23, who had arrived 30 minutes late to the Thompson crash because he'd been passed out drunk in a ditch. But that wasn't right either. His memories were shifting, changing, reforming like snow in a blizzard. The truth was in there somewhere, buried under layers of guilt and self-deception. The children's voices drifted through the storm, singing a lullaby that Mike remembered from his own childhood. But the words were wrong. Rock-a-bye, baby, in the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall, and Dr. Mike will save us all. Except he hadn't saved them. He'd failed them completely. The official investigation had cleared him of wrongdoing, but Mike knew the truth. He'd been drunk, incompetent, useless when they needed him most. Or had he? The memories were fracturing, showing him different versions of the same night. In one, he was the hero, working tirelessly to save lives. In another, he was the villain, watching children die through his own negligence. In a third, he wasn't there at all. Someone else was wearing his uniform, using his name, taking his place in history. Mike found himself at the edge of a frozen lake, though he couldn't remember skiing there. The ice was black and smooth, like a mirror. When he looked into it, he saw not his own reflection, but the face of Emma Thompson, 2 years old and trusting, looking up at him with eyes that asked a simple question: why? I tried, Mike whispered to the ice. I did everything I could. But Emma's reflection shook her head sadly. No, Dr. Mike, you didn't try at all. The ice began to crack beneath his skis, spiderweb fractures spreading out from where he stood. Mike scrambled backward, but the cracks followed him, as if the very ground was rejecting his presence. Rex appeared at the edge of the lake, barking frantically. But something was wrong with the dog. Rex looked younger, smaller, the way he had when Mike first rescued him, and his bark was different, higher, more desperate, like the cry of an animal in pain. "Rex! Here, boy!" Mike called, but the dog wouldn't come to him. Instead, Rex ran in circles, barking at something Mike couldn't see. Then Mike smelled it, smoke, thick and acrid. Not wood smoke, but the smell of burning plastic, melting metal and something else, something organic, the smell of the ambulance fire. Mike's knees gave out. He knelt in the snow, his hands pressed to his face as the memories came flooding back. Not the sanitized version he'd been telling himself for 3 years, but the truth. He hadn't been a hero that night. He hadn't even been a competent paramedic. He'd been a drunk, a coward, and when the ambulance had caught fire, when the children had started screaming, he'd run. He'd saved himself and let them burn. The children's voices were louder now, singing their twisted lullaby over and over. Mike looked up to see 7 small figures standing on the other side of the lake. They were holding hands again, but their clothes were different now, charred, melted, ruined by fire. "We're ready for our treatment now, Dr. Mike," Emma called, across the ice. "Are you ready to help us?" Mike tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't support him. The weight of 3 years of lies was crushing him, forcing him down into the snow that was no longer white, but gray with ash. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." The children smiled, but their smiles were sad and knowing. They began to walk across the ice toward him, their footsteps making no sound. As they approached, Mike could see the fire damage more clearly, the burns, the missing pieces, the way their small bodies had been destroyed by flames he could have prevented. "Sorry isn't enough," David said, his voice crackling like burning wood, "but it's a start." The Wendigo wore the faces of 7 children, but it was something else entirely. Ancient hunger-given form, it stood 15 feet tall in the clearing where Mike had finally stopped running. Its body was a fusion of the Thompson children. Emma's blonde curls, matted with ice, David's protective stance even in death, all 7 of them merged into something that should not exist. But Mike knew better. This wasn't some forest monster. This was justice, finally catching up to him. "Dr. Mike," the creature spoke with Emma's voice, though its mouth was too large, filled with too many teeth. "We've been waiting so long for you to come back." The Wendigo's eyes were 14 burning coals, 7 pairs of children's eyes that had looked at him with trust as they died. They glowed with fever, the fever Mike had failed to treat, the fire he had failed to escape, the life he had failed to preserve. "You know why we're here," it continued, its voice shifting through all 7 children's tones like a broken radio. "You know what you did to us." Mike fumbled for his medical bag, but his hands were shaking so badly he could barely grip the zipper. "I tried to save you," he said, though the words tasted like ash in his mouth. "I did everything I could." The Wendigo laughed, a sound like breaking glass and burning wood. "No, Dr. Mike, you did nothing. You watched us burn while you ran away to save yourself." Rex appeared at Mike's side, but the dog was different now. Younger, smaller, his fur singed, and his eyes wild with terror. This was Rex as he'd been that night, trapped in the burning ambulance while Mike fled. "Even your dog knows the truth," the creature said. "Rex died because of you, just like we did." Mike tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The memories were too strong now, too clear. He remembered the ambulance catching fire, the children's screams, the way he'd grabbed Rex and run. But then the flames had spread faster than expected, and he'd had to choose. Go back for the children, or save himself and his dog. He dropped Rex and kept running. You left us all to die, the Wendigo said, its voice growing louder, more accusatory. 7 children and 1 loyal dog. 9 lives lost because you were a coward. The creature moved closer, its massive form shifting and changing. Sometimes it looked like 7 children holding hands, sometimes like a tower of burning flesh, sometimes like the exact moment of Mike's greatest failure made manifest. But you know what's worse than being a coward? It asked, kneeling down so its burning eyes were level with Mike's. Being a liar. You've spent 3 years telling yourself you were a hero, making up stories about how hard you tried, how much you cared, how it wasn't your fault. Mike shook his head, but the denial was weak. The Wendigo reached out with hands that were sometimes Emma's tiny fingers, sometimes David's protective grip, sometimes the charred remains of what they'd become. Tell us the truth, Dr. Mike. What really happened that night? The words came out in a whisper, forced from Mike's throat like poison being drawn from a wound. I was drunk. I got to the scene late. The ambulance was already on fire when I arrived. And I couldn't. He broke down, sobbing. I couldn't go in. I was too scared. I let you all die. Louder, the Wendigo demanded. Let the forest hear you. Let the world know what you really are. I let them die, Mike screamed, his voice echoing through the trees. I let 7 children burn to death because I was too much of a coward to save them. I'm not a hero. I'm not even a decent human being. I'm a coward and a drunk and a failure. The Wendigo smiled, and for a moment it almost looked like the children Mike remembered. Innocent, trusting, forgiving. That's better, it said. Now tell us, what should happen to cowards who let children die? Mike looked at Rex, who was backing away from him with his tail between his legs. Even his dog knew the truth now. There was no one left to fool, no one left to lie to. They should burn, Mike whispered. They should burn like the children burned. The Wendigo nodded approvingly. Yes, they should. It gestured toward the trees, and Mike saw that the forest around them was changing. The pines were transforming into the interior of an ambulance, metal walls, medical equipment, the narrow space where 7 children had died while he ran away. But first, the creature said, you need to understand something else, something important. The Wendigo's form shifted again, becoming more solid, more real. Mike could smell the smoke on its skin, feel the heat radiating from its burns. This wasn't a hallucination or a guilt-induced fantasy. This was something else entirely. You've been dead for 3 years, Dr. Mike. You died in that ambulance fire, along with the rest of us. This whole time, the cabin, the forest, the solitude, it's all been in your mind. You're in purgatory, reliving your worst moment over and over, trying to find a way to make it right. Mike's world tilted. The ground beneath him felt insubstantial, like he might fall through it at any moment. I can't be dead, the Wendigo finished. You can't be dead, but you are. You ran into that burning ambulance 3 years ago, not to save us, but to save yourself from having to face what you'd done. You died with us, Dr. Mike, and you've been trapped here ever since, living in a fantasy where you're still alive, still trying to be the hero you never were. The forest around them was fully transformed now. They were inside the ambulance, surrounded by flames and smoke and the screams of dying children. Rex was there too, smaller and more terrified than Mike had ever seen him. So, here's your choice, the Wendigo said, its voice now a chorus of all 7 children speaking in unison. You can accept the truth and move on, face whatever judgment awaits you, or you can stay here forever, trapped in this moment, trying to save us over and over again, failing every time. Mike looked at his hands. They were translucent now, fading in and out like smoke. The medical equipment around him was melting in the heat, useless as it had always been. What happens if I stay? He asked. The Wendigo's smile was infinitely sad. You keep trying to save us, keep failing, keep hating yourself forever. And if I go, you face the truth. All of it. The drinking, the cowardice, the lies you told. Yourself. You face what you really are and you accept whatever comes next. Mike looked at Rex one more time. The dog was watching him, with eyes full of love and forgiveness, despite everything Mike had done to him. Even now, even knowing the truth, Rex was willing to stay by his side. That was what broke him. Not the children's accusations, not the weight of his failures, but the unconditional love of a dog he'd betrayed. "I want to go," Mike whispered. "I want to face the truth." The Wendigo nodded, and as it did, it began to separate back into 7 individual children. Real children, not monsters, just kids who had died too young because of one man's cowardice. "We forgive you, Dr. Mike," Emma said, her 2-year-old voice clear and strong. "Not because you deserve it, but because forgiveness is who we are." "Will you help us now?" David asked. "Will you finally do what you should have done 3 years ago?" Mike nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Yes, I'll help you. I'll help us all." He reached out and took Emma's tiny hand in his own. It was warm, real, solid. One by one, the other children took his hands too, and Rex, pressed against his leg, no longer afraid. Together, they walked toward the flames. The ambulance was exactly as Mike remembered it from that night 3 years ago, cramped, filled with smoke, and blazing with a heat that seemed to come from hell itself. But this time, he wasn't running away. This time, he was walking toward the flames with 7 children and 1 faithful dog, finally ready to face the truth of what he'd done. "Are you sure about this, Dr. Mike?" Emma asked, her small hand gripping his tightly. She looked up at him with eyes that held no accusation, only love and a wisdom far beyond her 2 years. Mike nodded, though his entire being screamed against it. Every instinct told him to run, to save himself, to find another way. But there was no other way. There never had been. "I'm sure," he said, and for the first time in 3 years, he meant it completely. The children arranged themselves in the positions they'd been in that night. David trying to shield the younger ones, Emma crying for her mother, all of them looking to Mike for salvation that he'd been too weak to provide. But this time was different. Mike knelt beside them, his medical bag forgotten. He didn't need equipment now. He needed something far more difficult to give. Honesty. "I failed you," he said, his voice steady despite the flames growing around. "Them. I was drunk that night. I was scared. When the ambulance caught fire, I ran. I left you all to die because I was too much of a coward to try to save you." The children listened without judgment. Rex settled beside Emma, no longer the terrified puppy from Mike's memories, but the loyal companion who had chosen to die with the children rather than abandon them. "I've spent 3 years lying to myself," Mike continued, the heat making it hard to breathe. "Telling myself I was a hero, that I tried my best, that it wasn't my fault, but it was my fault, all of it." "We know," David said gently. "We've always known, but we've been waiting for you to know it too." The flames were closer now, licking at the edges of Mike's clothes. He should have been terrified, but instead he felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years. Peace. "What happens now?" he asked. Emma smiled, and in that smile, Mike saw not the 2-year-old victim, but something eternal and vast and forgiving. "Now you get to choose who you really are," she said. "Not the hero you pretended to be, not the coward you've been hiding from. Who you choose to be right now, in this moment." Mike looked around at the 7 faces watching him expectantly. These children had every right to hate him, to want revenge, to condemn him to eternal suffering. Instead, they were offering him something he'd never thought possible: redemption. "I choose to be someone who stays," he said. "Someone who doesn't run. Someone who faces the fire with the people he should have protected." The children began to sing, not the twisted lullaby from his nightmares, but a song Mike remembered from his own childhood. a song about going home. Their voices rose above the crackling flames, pure and clear and beautiful. Rex nuzzled against Mike's hand one last time, and Mike finally understood why the dog had always looked at him with such sad, knowing eyes. Rex had been trying to tell him the truth all along, that love meant staying, even when staying meant dying. The silver cross around Mike's neck had stopped burning. Instead, it felt cool against his skin, like a gentle hand offering comfort. Emma reached up and touched it with her tiny fingers. "This was mine," she said without accusation. "I know," Mike replied. "I took it from you. I'm sorry." "You can keep it," Emma said, "but not as punishment. As a reminder that even broken people can choose to do the right thing." The flames reached them then, and Mike braced for agony. But instead of pain, he felt warmth. The kind of warmth that comes from being surrounded by people who love you, despite everything you've done wrong. The ambulance began to dissolve around them, the metal walls becoming transparent, then vanishing entirely. They were back in the forest, but it was different now. The snow was gone, replaced by rich earth and new grass. The trees were beginning to bud, as if winter was finally ending after 3 long years. "Is this real?" Mike asked. "As real as anything else," David said. "You faced the truth, Dr. Mike. You chose love over fear. That changes things." Mike felt himself growing lighter, more translucent. He was fading, but it didn't frighten him. The children were fading too, their task finally complete. "Will I see you again?" he asked. "When you're ready," Emma said. "When you've learned to forgive yourself the way we've forgiven you." One by one, the children began to disappear, their forms becoming motes of light that drifted upward through the trees. Rex was the last to go, pausing to lick Mike's hand one final time before dissolving into golden sparks. Mike was alone in the forest, but for the first time in 3 years, he didn't feel abandoned. He felt free. He looked down at his hands and saw they were solid again, real. The silver cross still hung around his neck, but it no longer burned. Instead, it seemed to pulse gently, like a heartbeat. In the distance, Mike could hear voices, real voices, not the ghostly whispers that had haunted him. Someone was calling his name. Searchers, maybe, people who had been looking for him, who cared enough to come into the wilderness to find him. Mike started walking toward the voices, his steps sure and purposeful. He had a choice to make. He could hide in the forest forever, clinging to his guilt and isolation, or he could go back to the world, face the consequences of his actions, and try to become the person he should have been all along. The voices were getting closer. Mike could see lights through the trees now, flashlights, searchers making their way through the darkness. He took a deep breath and called out, "I'm here! I'm here!" His voice echoed through the forest, strong and clear. Behind him, in the spot where he'd finally faced the truth, 7 small saplings began to push through the soil. They would grow, tall and strong, a living memorial to children who had taught a broken man that redemption was possible, even for those who thought themselves beyond saving. Mike walked toward the lights, toward the voices calling his name, toward whatever came next. He was no longer Dr. Mike, the hero of his own delusions. He was no longer the coward who had let children die. He was simply Mike, flawed, human, and finally ready to live with the truth. The silver cross caught the moonlight as he walked, and for just a moment, Mike could swear he heard Emma's voice one last time, carried on the wind. "Thank you for staying with us, Dr. Mike. Thank you for not running away." Mike smiled through his tears and kept walking toward the light, carrying the cross and the memory of 7 children who had loved him enough to show him the way home. In the spring, when the snow finally melted completely, the 7 saplings would bloom with flowers unlike any the forest had ever seen. Flowers that glowed softly in the darkness, guiding lost souls toward redemption, toward truth, toward the kind of love that burns away everything false and leaves only what is real. But that is a story for another day. For now, Mike walked toward the voices in the darkness, finally ready to face whatever judgment awaited him, knowing that he would face it not as a coward, but as a man who had chosen, at last, to stay. My name is James Reeves, but everyone calls me Big Jim. I'm a park ranger here in the Colorado mountains, and I've been walking these trails for 5 years now. Before that, I was a cop in Detroit for 20 years, but I don't like talking about those days much. The morning started just like any other. The sun was coming up over the snowy mountain tops, making everything look golden and peaceful. I was walking my usual patrol with Rex, my German shepherd. He used to be a police dog too, before we both retired to this quiet place. The tall pine trees stretched up to the sky like giant pillars, and I could hear Copper Creek bubbling somewhere nearby. Birds were singing their morning songs, and I heard an elk calling in the distance. This was why I came here. After all those years of seeing the worst things people could do to each other, I needed this peace. I needed the quiet. See, I made a terrible mistake back in Detroit. During a robbery call, I shot a kid who was only 17. I thought he had a gun, but it was just his wallet. The sound of his mother crying at my trial still haunts me every single night. That's when I knew I had to leave. I couldn't be a city cop anymore. But this morning felt different somehow. Rex had been acting strange since we left the ranger station. Usually he walks right beside me, happy and alert. Today, he kept looking over his shoulder and whining softly. His ears were always up like he was listening for something I couldn't hear. Then it happened. Everything went quiet. Not the normal kind of quiet you get in the woods. This was different. The birds stopped singing all at once. The wind threw. The trees just stopped. Even the creek seemed to get quieter. It was like someone had turned down the volume on the whole world. My ears started hurting, like when you're in an airplane that's going up too fast. I looked up and saw dark clouds forming in the clear blue sky, moving way faster than clouds should move. I grabbed my radio to call it in, but all I got was static. Weird static, too, that almost sounded like people talking backwards. That's when I saw the chipmunk. Now, wild chipmunks usually run away when they see people. But this little guy came right up to me, bold as anything. Rex started growling low in his throat. When I looked closer at the chipmunk, I felt my blood turn cold. Its eyes were completely white. No black pupils at all, just white. The temperature started dropping fast. I could see my breath, even though the sun was still shining bright. Frost began forming on the tree bark around me. I've been in these mountains long enough to know that's not normal. I looked around for the trail markers. I knew by heart, but they weren't where they should be. The big rock that looks like a bear's head was on my left instead of my right. The old lightning-struck tree was behind me when it should have been ahead. It was like the forest was moving around me, changing when I wasn't looking. But the worst part was the feeling. You know how sometimes you just know someone's watching you? This was like that, but 100 times stronger. Something was out there in the trees, something that didn't belong, something that wanted to hurt me. My skin felt crawly, and every instinct I'd learned as a cop was screaming at me to run. Rex pressed close against my leg, shaking. I'd never seen him scared like this, not even during the worst calls we'd handled together back in Detroit. I reached down and petted his head, trying to calm us both down. "Easy, boy," I whispered. "We'll figure this out." But deep down, I knew something terrible was about to happen. I'd been having nightmares for the past week about being chased through dark woods by something I couldn't see. Now, standing in this too quiet forest with frost forming in the sunlight, I realized those dreams might have been warnings. I should have turned back right then. I should have grabbed Rex and headed straight for the ranger station. But I'm stubborn, always have been. 20 years as a cop taught me never to back down from anything. Besides, there was a family camping illegally somewhere in my area. I'd found their site a few days ago, mom, dad, and two little kids just trying to have a cheap vacation. I couldn't leave them out here if something dangerous was happening. So instead of running, I kept walking deeper into the woods, following the twisted trail that didn't look quite right anymore. Rex stayed close, but I could feel him trembling against my leg. The silence followed us like a living thing, spreading out in all directions. And somewhere in that silence, I knew something ancient and hungry was waiting. We walked for maybe 20 minutes before I found the first real sign of trouble. There in the soft dirt next to the trail was a footprint, but this wasn't made by any hiker's boot. It was huge, maybe 20 inches long, and it had 6 toes, 6 thick, stubby toes with what looked like claw marks at the tips. The print was pressed so deep into the ground that it had cracked the frozen earth underneath. Whatever made this had to weigh at least 500 pounds, maybe more. I knelt down and put my hand next to it for size. My whole hand looked tiny. Next to just one of those toes, Rex sniffed at the print and immediately backed away, his fur standing up along his back. He'd never acted like this before, not even when we came across bears or mountain lions. I stood up and looked around. That's when I saw what had happened to the trees. 3 big oak trees that had been growing here for probably 100 years were all torn up. There were claw marks running up the bark, starting about 8 feet off the ground and going up another 7 feet. Deep gouges that went right through the bark and into the wood underneath. Golden tree sap was oozing out of the cuts like the trees were bleeding. The smell hit me then. Oh God, the smell. It was like a fish that had been left out in the sun for weeks, mixed with the sulfur smell you get from rotten eggs and something else, something wild and animal-like, but wrong. I had to cover my nose with my sleeve to keep from throwing up. What the hell made this mess? I said out loud, mostly to hear my own voice. The sound seemed to get swallowed up by the trees before it could travel very far. I pulled out my GPS to mark the location, but the screen was spinning like crazy. The little arrow that shows where you are was going round and round like a slot machine. Then the screen cracked right down the middle with a sound like breaking glass. I tried my flashlight and it turned on, but instead of normal white light, it was glowing green, sickly green, like the color of old pond water. My compass wasn't working either. The needle was spinning so fast it looked like a blur. All my equipment was going crazy at the same time, like something was messing with all the electronics. That's when I heard the laughing. It was children laughing, the sound of kids playing and having fun. But it was coming from up in the trees, way too high up for any kids to be. And it was coming from different directions at once. First from my left, then from behind me, then from somewhere up ahead. Rex started whining and pressed himself against my legs. "Hello?" I called out. "Is someone up there?" The laughing stopped, right away, like someone had flipped a switch. The silence came back, heavier than before. I kept walking, following what I thought was the trail. But every step felt wrong. The path kept curving when it should have been straight. I passed the same fallen log 3 times, even though I was sure I was walking in a straight line. Then I found the campsite. I smelled the smoke before I saw it. Not the good smell of a campfire, but the bitter smell of burned plastic and melted metal. When I pushed through a stand of pine trees, I saw what was left of where that family had been staying. Their 2 tents were completely destroyed, not just collapsed, shredded. Long tears in the fabric like something with huge claws had gone. Crazy on them. Sleeping bags were ripped open with stuffing scattered everywhere like snow. Their cooler had been thrown about 50 yards and was smashed into pieces against a tree. But the weird part was how everything was spread out. Their stuff was scattered in a perfect circle, maybe 100 yards across. Cans of food, clothes, and little girl's teddy bear. All of it arranged, like something had picked up their campsite and exploded it outward from the center. I found their car keys hanging from a tree branch 15 feet up. No way the wind could have put them there. "Hello," I shouted. "Can anyone hear me? Are you okay?" Nothing. just that awful silence. I looked for blood, for any sign of what happened. To them, there were some dark stains on the rocks, but I couldn't tell what they were. No bodies, no sounds, nothing to tell me if they got away or something else. Rex was acting crazy now. He kept running in circles around the destroyed campsite, whimpering and pawing at the ground. His nose was working overtime, trying to pick up a scent trail, but he couldn't seem to follow it anywhere. It was like the family had just vanished into thin air. I tried my radio again. Still just static, but now the static almost sounded like voices, whispers too quiet to make out the words. I turned the volume all the way up, and for just a second, I could swear I heard someone saying, "Help us," over and over again. The creek behind me started making a weird sound. I turned around and couldn't believe what I saw. The water was flowing backwards, uphill, for about 50 yards before it turned around and went the normal way again. And rocks, just regular. Rocks the size of baseballs were floating up off the ground, hanging in the air for a few seconds, then crashing back down. That's when I saw the hair. Caught on. Some low branches were clumps of thick, dark fur, not like any animal I knew. It was coarse and matted, almost black, but when I moved my head, it seemed to change color slightly. Sometimes it looked brown, sometimes almost red, like it couldn't decide what color it wanted to be. I pulled out a plastic evidence bag, old habit from my cop days, and collected some of the hair. It felt wrong in my hands, too thick and oily. By now I was starting to panic, not the kind of panic where you run around screaming, but the cold, professional panic I used to get during the worst calls in Detroit. Something very bad was happening here, and I was in way over my head. I needed to get back to the ranger station and call for help. But when I looked around, I realized I had no idea which way I'd come from. Every direction looked the same. Thick trees and shadows. The trail I'd been following was gone. It was like the forest had erased it while I wasn't looking. Rex looked up at me with scared eyes, waiting for me to fix this like I always did. But for the first time in my life, I didn't know what to do. That's when I heard the branch snap behind me. I turned around real slow. My heart was beating so hard, I thought it might jump right out of my chest. Rex was growling now, a low sound that meant serious danger. His teeth were showing, and every muscle in his body was tight. At first, I didn't see anything, just trees and shadows. But then one of the shadows moved. It was huge, at least 8 feet tall, maybe more, covered in thick, dark fur from head to toe. Its arms hung down almost to its knees, and its hands looked big enough to crush a man's head like an egg. But the worst part was its eyes. They glowed like 2 pieces of amber with fire behind them, and they were looking right at me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. 20 years as a cop, and I'd never been this scared. This thing wasn't natural. It was wrong in every way something could be wrong. We stared at each other for what felt like forever. Then, without making a sound, it just disappeared. Not like it ran away. It was there 1 second, gone the next, like it had never been there at all. "What the hell?" I whispered. Rex was going crazy, barking and spinning in circles, trying to pick up the scent. But there was nothing. No tracks where it had been standing, no smell, nothing. I pulled out my service pistol. My hands were shaking, but I managed to get it out of the holster. 6 bullets. That should be enough for anything, right? Wrong. The thing appeared again, but this time it was behind me. I spun around and fired 3 shots as fast as I could pull the trigger. The bullets hit it dead center in the chest. I saw them hit, but they just went right through it like it was made of smoke. The creature didn't even flinch. That's when the voice started in my head. "You killed me," it said. But it wasn't the creature's voice. It was Marcus, the 17-year-old kid I'd shot in Detroit. "You murdered me, Jim. Shot me down like a dog." "No," I said out loud. "You're not real. Marcus is dead." "Because of you," the voice said. "My mom cries every night because of you. My little sister asks why her big brother isn't coming home. I press my hands against my ears, but the voice was inside my head. There was no blocking it out. The creature moved closer. It didn't walk like a normal animal. It glided between the trees, sometimes solid, sometimes see-through, like it couldn't decide if it wanted to be real or not. "You should have stayed in Detroit," another voice said. This time it was my ex-wife, Sarah. "You're a coward, Jim. You ran away from your problems instead of facing them." "Stop it," I said, but my voice sounded weak and scared. "And now more people are going to die because of you," said my father's voice. Dad had been dead for 10 years, but I could hear him clear as day. You couldn't save that family just like you couldn't save anyone. The creature was playing with me. I could see it in those glowing eyes. It was smart, smarter than any animal should be. It knew exactly how to hurt me. Rex tried to help. My brave dog charged right at the thing, barking and snarling, but the creature moved faster than anything I'd ever seen. 1 second Rex was running toward it. The next second there was just a quick yelp, and Rex was gone. "Rex!" I screamed. "Rex!" All I found was a small patch of blood on the white snow. My partner, my best friend, was just gone. That's when I lost it. I emptied the rest of my bullets at the creature, screaming and crying at the same time. But the bullets did nothing. They passed right through it like it was a ghost. The forest around me started changing. The trees grew taller and closer together. The spaces between them got darker and darker until I couldn't see the sky anymore. It was like being trapped in a living tunnel that was closing in on me. I ran. I'm not proud of it, but I ran as fast as I could. Behind me, I could hear the creature following. Not footsteps. It moved too quietly for that. But I could feel it back there, hunting me like I was just another animal in the woods. The voices in my head got louder. Marcus, Sarah, my parents, even the voice of that little girl's mother from the destroyed campsite, all talking at once, telling me I was worthless, that I was a killer, that everyone I'd ever tried to protect had died because of me. I stumbled over roots and rocks, crashing through bushes, getting scratched up by branches. My lungs were burning, but I couldn't stop running. Every time I looked back, I saw those glowing eyes following me through the trees. Then I saw something that made me stop. Up ahead, there was a rocky hill with flat stones sticking out of it. And carved into those stones were pictures. Old pictures like the kind Native Americans used to make. Pictures of men hunting, of animals. And right in the center, a picture of something that looked just like the creature chasing me. But these weren't just any pictures. They were warnings. I could tell because around the creature, in the carving, were symbols that looked like they meant danger or evil. And at the bottom, there were marks that looked like they were counting the dead, maybe. I looked at my grandfather's hunting knife on my belt. The bone handle was warm to the touch, warmer than it should be, and in the dim light filtering through the trees, it almost looked like it was glowing. Behind me, a branch cracked, then another. The creature was getting closer. I looked at the carved stones again and realized something. The pictures weren't just warnings. They were instructions. The old people who lived here before had faced this thing too, and somehow they'd figured out how to fight it. But first, I had to survive long enough to figure out what they knew. The glowing eyes appeared in the trees behind me, closer than ever. And this time there weren't just 2 of them. There were 6. The creature had somehow made copies of itself, and all 3 versions were surrounding me. I was trapped between the rocks and the monsters, with nowhere left to run. That's when I heard Rex bark somewhere in the distance. He was still alive. I had to try to save him, even if it killed me, because some things are worth dying for. The 3 creatures moved closer, their glowing eyes getting brighter in the growing darkness. I backed up against the rocky wall with all those old carved pictures. My grandfather's knife felt hot against my side, like it was on fire. I pulled it out, and I couldn't believe what I saw. The bone handle was glowing with a soft blue light, just bright enough to see by. The blade looked sharper than it ever had before, like it had just been made instead of being passed down through 3 generations of my family. "Come on then," I said to the creatures. My voice was steadier than I felt. "Let's finish this." The 3 beasts started circling me, but something weird happened. As they got closer to the carved stones, they began to look more solid, less like smoke and more like real animals, heavy, touchable. One of them reached out with a massive hand to grab me. Without thinking, I slashed with the glowing knife. The blade cut deep into its arm, and black blood splattered on the rocks. The creature screamed, not like an animal, but like a person in terrible pain. It worked. The knife could hurt them here. I looked closer at the carved pictures on the wall. There was a circle carved around the monster picture with strange symbols inside it. I was standing right in the middle of that circle. That's why the creatures were becoming solid. This was a trap, built by people who lived here long ago. They'd faced this evil before and found a way to fight it. But the trap worked both ways. I couldn't leave the circle, or the creatures would become like smoke again. And they couldn't leave either, or they'd lose their solid form. We were all stuck, here together, until one of us was dead. The largest creature lunged at me. I dodged to the side and drove the knife into its ribs. More black blood, more screaming. But there were still 3 of them, and only 1 of me. The forest around us went crazy. Tree branches reached down like arms, trying to grab me. Roots came up out of the ground to trip me. Rocks fell from above like rain. The creature was controlling everything, trying to kill me without having to get close to my knife. I rolled and dodged, staying inside the stone circle. Every time one of the beasts got close enough, I cut it with the blade. But they were learning to be more careful. The voices in my head got louder and meaner. "You're going to die here," Marcus said, "just like you killed me." "Nobody will ever find your body," my father added. "You'll just disappear like that poor family." But then I heard another voice. A voice I hadn't heard in 20 years. "Jimmy," it said. It was my grandfather, the man who'd given me the knife. "Listen to me, boy. You're not a killer. You made a mistake, but that doesn't make you evil. You came here to protect people, just like I did, just like your father did. That's what we do." The knife got brighter in my hand. "The old people who made this trap," Grandpa's voice said, "they knew this thing feeds on guilt and fear. Don't let it eat you alive, Jimmy. You're better than that." I stopped, running and dodging. I stood up straight in the center of the circle and looked at the 3 creatures surrounding me. "You know what?" I said to them. "I did shoot that kid. It was a mistake, but I did it. And yeah, I ran away instead of dealing with it, but I'm not running anymore." The creatures hesitated. Their eyes flickered like candles in the wind. "I'm done being scared of you," I continued. "I'm done being scared of my past. That family out there needs help, and Rex needs help, and I'm not going to let you hurt anyone else." The 3 beasts rushed me all at once, but I was ready. I met the first one head-on, driving the knife deep into its chest. The blue light from the blade spread through its whole body like electricity. It fell down and didn't get up. The second one grabbed my arm, but I twisted away and slashed across its throat. More black blood, more blue light. It dropped beside the first. The last creature was the biggest one. It knocked me down and pinned me to the ground with one huge hand around my throat. I could barely breathe. Its other hand raised up, ready to crush my skull. With the last of my strength, I brought the knife up and stabbed it right in the heart. The creature exploded, not like a bomb, but like a balloon full of light and sound and pain. The blast threw me against the rock wall and filled my head with every bad thought I'd ever had all at once. It felt like being struck by lightning, but from the inside out, when the light faded, all 3 creatures were gone, just ash blowing away in the wind. I tried to stand up, but my legs wouldn't work right. Something was wrong inside me. The explosion had hurt me bad, in ways I couldn't see. I could taste blood in my mouth, but I could hear Rex barking again, closer this time. I followed the sound, crawling when I couldn't walk. I found him trapped under a fallen tree branch, scared but alive. I managed to push the branch off him, and he licked my face like I'd been gone for a year. My radio crackled to life. The static was gone. "This is Ranger Reeves," I said into it. My voice sounded weak and far away. "I'm at the old petroglyphs. Site near Copper Creek. Need immediate help. Found the missing family's campsite destroyed. Something dangerous in the woods. Very dangerous." "Jim, this is Base," came the reply. "We've been trying to reach you for hours. Are you okay?" "No," I said honestly. "I'm not okay. But I stopped it. The thing that was killing people. It's gone now." I could feel myself getting weaker. The explosion had done something to me inside, something that wasn't going to heal. I had maybe a few minutes left. "Rex," I whispered to my dog, "you need to lead them to that family. Find them, boy. Help them get home." Rex whined and pressed closer to me. He knew what was happening. I keyed the radio one more time. "Base, this is my final report. There are old Native American warning markers at the petroglyph site. Pay attention to them. They knew things we don't. They left instructions for a reason." The radio slipped from my hand. The sky above was getting dark, but not from night coming. It was dark because I was dying. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Rex's collar, the one he'd worn when we were partners in Detroit. I held it tight as everything got quiet and peaceful. The last thing I heard was Rex howling, long and sad, like dogs do when they're saying goodbye. They found my body 3 days later. Rex had stayed with me the whole time, guarding me. He led the rescue team to the missing family, who were hiding in a cave, scared but alive. They'd heard the creature screaming when it died, and they knew someone had saved them. The other rangers put my story in the files, but they marked it as animal attack. They didn't want to scare tourists away from the mountains, but they also put warning signs near the petroglyphs telling people to stay away. Sometimes on quiet nights, other rangers say they can hear Rex barking in the distance, still protecting his territory, still making sure nothing like that ever comes back to hurt the people he's sworn to protect. And my grandfather's knife? They never found it. It disappeared the night I died, like it was waiting for the next person who might need it. My name was James Reeves. I was a park ranger in the Colorado mountains, and this is how I died. But more importantly, this is how I finally did something right. My name is Eleanor Morgan, but everyone calls me Ellie. I'm a park ranger here in the Ozarks National Forest in Arkansas, and tonight I wish I had never come out here alone. It was one of those hot summer evenings where the air feels thick like soup. You know the kind, where your shirt sticks to your back and every breath feels heavy. The heat was rising up from the rocky hills in little waves, making everything look wavy and strange. All around me, the old hardwood trees were buzzing with the sound of cicadas. They were so loud, it felt like someone was screaming right in my ears. But I love these woods. The whippoorwills were calling out across the hidden valleys with their sad, lonely song. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear bullfrogs croaking from the ponds I couldn't see. Night was coming, and all the hunters were starting to wake up. The owls, the foxes, all the creatures that come out when the sun goes down. Then something happened that made my blood run cold. Everything went quiet. I mean completely quiet. It was like someone had reached over and turned off all the sounds of the forest at once. No cicadas, no birds, no frogs, nothing. Just dead. Silence that felt heavy and wrong. I stopped walking and listened hard. My heart was beating so loud, I thought it might give me away to whatever was out there. That's when I saw the mist. Thick fog started rolling up from the valley floors, even though the sky was clear and full of stars. This wasn't normal fog. It smelled weird, like old blood mixed with something sharp and metallic. It made my nose burn and my eyes water. I reached for my radio to call back to headquarters, but all I got was horrible static mixed with what sounded like people screaming far away. The sound was so awful I had to turn it off. That's when I saw the raccoons. A whole family of them was walking toward me, but they weren't acting right. Raccoons are supposed to be scared of people, but these ones just kept coming. Their fur was patchy and falling out in spots, and when they looked at me, their eyes glowed red instead of the normal green. The air around me started getting cold in weird spots, even though it was still hot everywhere else. I could see my breath coming out in little puffs where the cold patches were, which made no sense at all. I've walked these trails 1,000 times, but now the rocks and caves looked different, like someone had moved them around while I wasn't looking. There were cave openings where I was sure there had never been caves before. Every part of my body was telling me to run. It was like that feeling you get when you're a little kid and you think there's a monster under your bed. Except this was real. Something was watching me from the darkness between the trees, and I just knew that I was in terrible danger. But I'm Eleanor Morgan, and I don't run from anything. You see, I'm not like most women in 1961. I'm the first female Park Ranger Arkansas has ever had. And let me tell you, getting this job was harder than climbing a mountain in the rain. The men didn't want me here. They said women were too weak, too scared, too emotional. They said I'd just cause trouble, but I needed this job. I needed to be in these woods where things make sense, where animals act like animals and trees grow the way they're supposed to. Out here, nobody cares that I'm a woman. The forest doesn't judge me. I'm not very tall, just 5 feet and 6 inches, but I'm strong. My hands are rough from years of outdoor work. I can climb rocks, fix broken fences, and yeah, I can even clean a deer if I have to. The other rangers finally started respecting me when they saw I could do the work just as well as them. Around my neck, I wear my father's silver cross on a chain. It's the only thing I have left of him. When I was 12, some bad men took him away one night. They said he was getting too uppity, asking for things he shouldn't ask for. We found. His truck burned out on the side of the road, but we never found him. Just this cross lying in the dirt. That night changed me, made me tough, made me decide I'd never let anyone push me around again. Tonight, I wasn't supposed to be alone. Dr. Michael Santos was supposed to be with me, but something happened to him earlier today. I found him passed out near Miller's Creek with these weird scratches on his arms. They looked like claw marks, but bigger than any animal I knew about. He was awake now, sitting against a tree about 20 feet behind me. But he didn't look good. His face was pale and sweaty, and those cuts kept bleeding even though I'd bandaged them up real good. "Ellie," he called out softly. His voice sounded shaky. "Maybe we should head back. I don't feel right about this place tonight." I turned to look at him. Dr. Santos was a plant expert from the university. He'd come out here to study some rare flowers, but now he looked scared, really scared. My grandmother was part Cherokee, and she always told me to listen when the forest talks. She said our people knew things about these mountains that others didn't. Right now, everything my grandmother taught me was screaming at me to get out of here. But the sheriff had been getting reports about something killing livestock, cows, and pigs found dead with all their blood gone. He said it was probably just a mountain lion, but I knew better. Mountain lions don't drain animals dry like that. I should have listened to old Henry Crow Feather. He's a medicine man who lives up on Bear Ridge. This morning, he'd grabbed my arm when I was getting supplies in town. "Don't go into the deep. Woods tonight, little sister," he'd said. His old eyes were serious. "The hungry shadow is walking. It feeds when the moon is dark." I should have listened, but I'm stubborn, and I thought I knew these woods better than anyone. Now, standing here in this weird fog with my heart pounding, I was starting to think maybe I didn't know them as well as I thought. "Dr. Santos," I whispered, "come look at this." I was shining my flashlight on an old oak tree, and what I saw made my stomach drop. There were claw marks scratched deep into the bark. not just little scratches. These were huge gouges, 4 inches deep and as wide as my hand. Fresh. Sap was still dripping out of them like the tree was crying. "What kind of animal could do this?" Dr. Santos asked, coming up behind me. His voice was shaky. "I've seen bear claws, mountain lion claws, even bobcat scratches. This wasn't any of those. These marks were too big, too deep. Whatever made them had to weigh as much as a small car." We kept walking, and that's when I found the deer. It was lying in a small clearing, and at first I thought it had just died naturally. But when I got closer with my flashlight, I had to cover my mouth to keep from getting sick. The deer looked like a balloon that had all the air let out of it. Its skin was hanging loose and wrinkled, like something had sucked everything out from inside. But here's the really weird part. There wasn't a single bite mark on it. No blood on the ground. No sign that anything had eaten it. It was just empty. "This isn't possible," Dr. Santos said, backing away from the deer. "Animals don't feed like this." That's when we heard it. A scream came from somewhere deep in the woods, but it wasn't human, and it wasn't like any animal I'd ever heard. It was so loud that I felt it in my chest, like standing next to a train when it blows its horn. The sound was so powerful that I heard tree branches cracking and falling. Somewhere in the darkness, my ears started ringing, and I tasted blood in my mouth. "Run," I said to Dr. Santos. "We need to get out of here right now." But when I looked at my compass, the needle was spinning backward. My watch was running the wrong way too, and my thermometer was showing temperatures that made no sense. Sometimes 100 degrees, sometimes below freezing, changing every few seconds. Then I smelled it. That horrible smell hit us like a wall. It was like rotting meat mixed with wet dog fur, and something that reminded me of lightning during a storm. It was so bad that both of us started throwing up. "Ellie!" Dr. Santos grabbed my arm. His bandages were soaked through with blood again, but the blood looked wrong. It was too light, almost silver-colored. "Something's happening to me. I can feel it changing me." The ground under our feet started shaking, but there was nothing there, just footsteps with no feet getting closer. Somewhere nearby, rocks were cracking like someone was stepping on them, but I couldn't see anything moving. I looked at my watch again. We'd been walking for what felt like 10 minutes, but the hands showed we'd been out here for 3 hours. The stars in the sky were in the wrong places, and the moon looked like it was getting smaller as I watched. "We're going the wrong way," I said, looking around. "This trail should lead back to the ranger station, but everything looks different. Every path we tried just led us deeper into the woods. Trees I'd known since I was a kid weren't where they should be. The creek that should have been on our left was on our right. Even my GPS was acting crazy, showing that we were somehow in the middle of the ocean. Dr. Santos was getting worse. He was breathing funny, and when he looked at me, his eyes seemed different, darker, like something else was looking out from behind them. "Ellie," he said quietly, "I don't think I'm going to make it out of here the same person I was when I came in." The fog was getting thicker around us, and I could hear something big moving through the trees, something that didn't care about being quiet anymore. Whatever was out there knew exactly where we were, and it was coming for us. I touched my father's cross through my shirt. It felt warm against my skin, which was strange because everything else was getting cold. "Stay close to me," I told Dr. Santos. "Whatever happens, don't let go of my hand." But deep down, I knew we were in more trouble than I could handle. This wasn't just some wild animal killing livestock. This was something that shouldn't exist, something that broke all the rules about how the world was supposed to work, and it was hunting us. We didn't have to wait long to see what was after us. It stepped out of the fog like something from a nightmare. At first, I thought it was just a really big panther, but as it got closer, I realized this thing was the size of a small horse. Its fur was so black it seemed to swallow up the light from my flashlight. When I shined the beam right at it, the light just disappeared into its coat like it was a hole in the world. But it was the eyes that made me freeze up completely. They glowed bright green, and they left trails in the dark when the thing moved its head like someone drawing with glow sticks. When it looked right at me, I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. It was like being caught in a spider's web, except the web was made of fear. In those green eyes, I saw myself dying. I saw it happening over and over again, different ways each time. I saw my blood on its claws, saw myself running and never getting away. The visions felt so real, I could taste the fear in my mouth. "Don't look at it," Dr. Santos whispered behind me, but his voice sounded strange, deeper than before. "Whatever you do, don't look right at it." The creature moved without making any sound, even though it had to weigh 400 pounds or more. It walked around us in a circle, staying just at the edge of where my flashlight could reach. Sometimes it looked solid and real. Other times it seemed see-through, like a ghost. I pulled out my knife, even though I knew it wouldn't help. This thing wasn't going to be stopped by a piece of steel. That's when it did something that nearly stopped my heart. It spoke, not with words, but somehow I could hear its voice in my head. It was showing me pictures of people I loved, my mother, my brother, my friends back in town, and in every picture they were in danger. It was telling me that if I ran, it would go after them instead. "It's trying to trick you," Dr. Santos said. But when I turned to look at him, I almost screamed. His face was changing, his teeth were getting longer and sharper, his fingernails had grown into claws. The cuts on his arms weren't bleeding anymore. They were healing, but the skin around them was turning grey. "I tried to fight it," he said, and his voice was barely human now. "When it attacked me yesterday, I tried to get away, but it's like a sickness, Ellie. Once it touches you, you become like it." The big creature made a sound that was almost like laughing. It knew it had us trapped. Dr. Santos was turning into one of them, and I was all alone with nowhere to run. Then Dr. Santos lunged at me. His claws barely missed my face as I jumped backward. He wasn't Dr. Santos anymore, or at least not completely. His eyes were starting to glow the same green as the big creature's. "I'm sorry," he said, but he was already reaching for me again. "I can't control it anymore." I rolled away just as his claws scraped across the ground where I'd been standing. The big creature was watching, like this was all some kind of game. To it. The fog was getting so thick I could barely see 3 feet in front of me. Both creatures could see in the dark better than I could, and they were using that against me. I'd hear footsteps coming from one direction, turn that way, and then feel claws swipe at me from behind. My father's cross was getting hot against my chest, so hot it was starting to burn my skin through my shirt. But every time one of the creatures got close, they would back away, like the cross was hurting them somehow. I remembered what my grandmother used to tell me about evil things. She said some old magic was stronger than people thought, especially in places where blood had been spilled and prayers had been said. "You can't have me," I said out loud, gripping the cross through my shirt, even though it was burning me. "I belong to something stronger than you." The big creature screamed again, but this time it sounded angry, frustrated. The sound shattered my flashlight and made my ears ring so bad I thought my head might explode. But I was still standing. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I had an idea. I remembered something from when I was little, a story my grandmother told about a place in these woods where the Cherokee used to go to pray. A sacred cave with water that could wash away evil things. If I could find it, maybe I had a chance. The only problem was getting there alive. I ran into the darkness, using my hands to feel my way between the trees. Behind me, I could hear both creatures following. Dr. Santos was making these awful growling sounds, and the big one's footsteps shook the ground, even though I couldn't see it. My grandmother's voice came back to me as I stumbled through the fog. "Little Ellie," she used, to say, "There's a place where the old people used to pray, deep in Copper Canyon, where the silver water flows from the heart of the mountain. Evil things can't touch that water. It burns them like fire." I'd been to Copper Canyon before, but never to look for any sacred cave. Now I was trying to remember every story she told me, every detail about how to find it. The canyon was about half a mile north, if I could trust my directions in this crazy fog. I ran as fast as I could, my father's cross bouncing against my chest and burning my skin. But that burning meant it was working, keeping the creatures from getting too close. Behind me, Dr. Santos called out in his changing voice, "Ellie, you can't run forever. Join us and the pain will stop." But I knew better. My grandmother had taught me that some things were worse than dying. I found the canyon by nearly falling into it. One second I was running through trees, the next second there was nothing under my feet but air. I grabbed onto a root at the last second and hung there, looking down into the darkness. This was it. Copper Canyon. Somewhere down there was the cave my grandmother had told me about. I climbed down carefully, feeling for handholds in the rock. My hands were shaking so bad I almost fell twice. Above me I could hear the creatures at the edge of the canyon, but they weren't following me down. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe this place really was protected. The canyon was narrow and full of shadows. I felt my way along the rocky walls, looking for any opening that might be a cave. My cross was still burning hot, but now it felt different. Not painful, but warm, like a hand holding mine. Then I heard it, the sound of water dripping. I followed the sound deeper into the canyon until I found a crack in the rock wall, just big enough for me to squeeze through. On the other side was a small cave, and in the back wall water was trickling down from somewhere high above. Even in the darkness, I could see that this water was different. It seemed to have its own light, like liquid moonlight. When I cupped some in my hands, it felt warm and tingly. This was it. This was the sacred water my grandmother had told me about. I heard scrabbling sounds outside the cave. They'd found a way down into the canyon. "Ellie?" Dr. Santos's voice was barely human now. "You can't hide from us." I took off my father's cross and dipped it in the silver water. The metal started glowing, not hot like before, but with a soft, steady light. I wrapped the chain around my hand, like a weapon. Then I started saying the Cherokee protection prayer my grandmother had taught me. I didn't speak Cherokee very well, but I remembered enough. "Great Spirit, protect your daughter. Keep the hungry shadows away from this sacred place." The words felt powerful in my mouth, like they were pulling strength from the very rocks around me. That's when the big creature squeezed through the crack into the cave. Up close, it was even more terrifying. Its green eyes filled the small space with that sick light, and I could smell its breath, like rotting meat and wet fur. But when it saw the silver water, it stopped. It tried to step forward, but something invisible was holding it back. The sacred water was like a wall it couldn't cross. Dr. Santos appeared behind it, but he was fully changed now. His face was stretched and wrong, covered with patchy fur. His hands had become huge claws, and when he opened his mouth, I saw rows of sharp teeth. "The water burns us," he said, but his voice was sad now, like the real Dr. Santos was still trapped inside somewhere. "But we can wait. You have to come out eventually." I looked at the silver water flowing down the cave wall. There was enough to fill maybe one water bottle. Not much, but it might be enough. That's when I realized what I had to do. The only way to stop these things was to make sure they never hurt anyone else. And there was only one way to do that. I had to trap them in here with me and bring the whole cave down on top of us. My father's cross was still glowing in my hand. The silver water made it shine like a star. If I was going to die, at least I'd die fighting. "Come on then," I said to the creatures. Let's finish this." The big creature lunged at me first. I threw the silver water right in its face, and it screamed like nothing I'd ever heard. Where the water hit, its fur started smoking and burning. It stumbled backward, clawing at its own face, but the damage was already done. The water had burned right through to whatever was underneath that black fur. Dr. Santos tried to grab me from behind, but I swung my father's cross at him. The glowing silver chain wrapped around his arm, and he screamed too. The cross was burning him, leaving marks on his skin that looked like they'd never heal. "I'm sorry," I whispered to him, because somewhere inside that monster, Dr. Santos was still there, still trapped. The cave was small, maybe 10 feet across, and with both creatures thrashing around in pain, there wasn't much room to move. But that was exactly what I needed. I reached into my backpack and pulled out the emergency flares I always carried. If I could weaken the rock ceiling enough, the whole thing would come down. These creatures were strong, but they couldn't survive tons of falling rock. The big creature recovered faster than I hoped. It came at me again, but this time it was careful to avoid the silver water still dripping from the cave wall. Its claws raked across my shoulder, and I felt my shirt tear and my skin split open. But I didn't stop. I lit the first flare and jammed it into a crack in the ceiling. The bright red light filled the cave, and I could see everything clearly for the first time. Dr. Santos wasn't completely gone. His eyes were still partly human, and when he looked at me, I could see he was fighting the thing that had taken him. "Over." "Do it," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "End this. Don't let us hurt anyone else." I lit the second flare and pushed it into another crack. The rock above us was already starting to shift. I could hear small pieces falling. The big creature realized what I was doing. It threw itself at me with everything it had, but I was ready. I held up my father's cross, and the silver light pushed it back like an invisible wall. "You can't stop us all," it said, speaking right into my mind. "There are others like us. They'll come when they smell your blood." "Maybe," I said, lighting the third flare. "But they'll have to get past me first." The ceiling cracked with a sound like thunder. Dust and small rocks started raining down on us. I thought about my father, about how he'd died trying to stand up for what was right. I thought about my grandmother and all the stories she'd told me about brave Cherokee warriors who gave their lives to protect their people. I thought about all the families in the towns around here, all the children who played in these woods. During the day, they deserved to be safe. The big creature made one last desperate attack. Its claws caught me across the chest, right where my father's cross hung. But instead of tearing the chain, the claws seemed to melt when they touched the silver. I pressed the cross against the creature's chest and said the last Cherokee prayer my grandmother had taught me. The prayer for sending spirits to their rest. The creature's green eyes went wide, and for just a second I saw something else in them, something that might have been relief. Then the ceiling came down. The crash was so loud it felt like the whole mountain was falling. Rocks the size of cars smashed down around us, and dust filled the air so thick I couldn't breathe. But I wasn't afraid anymore. The silver water was still flowing, and my father's cross was still glowing in my hand. I felt peaceful, like I was going to sleep after a very long day. The last thing I remember was the sound of my radio crackling to life. Somehow, in all that chaos, it was working again. "This is Ranger Morgan," I said into it, even though I could barely speak. "Stay away from Copper Canyon. The threat has been, contained. Tell Henry Crow Feather that the Hungry Shadow is gone. I never made it out of that cave. They searched for weeks, but they never found my body. The entrance was completely sealed by the rockfall, and every time they tried to dig it out, more rocks would fall. But that's not the end of the story. The livestock killings stopped that night, and over the years, other rangers started reporting something strange. When they got lost in the deep woods, or when something dangerous was stalking them, they'd sometimes see a woman in an old ranger uniform. She never spoke, but she'd point them towards safety. And she always wore a silver cross that glowed softly. In the darkness, the Cherokee people say I became a guardian spirit, protecting these mountains from things that shouldn't exist. They leave offerings at the entrance to Copper Canyon, tobacco and sage and small silver crosses. Henry Crow Feather says I'm still here, still watching, still making sure the hungry shadows stay away from the people I swore to protect. And you know what? I think he's right. Because sometimes late at night when the moon is dark and something evil stirs in these ancient hills, you can still hear my voice on the Ranger radio. This is Ranger Morgan. The woods are safe tonight. Sleep.
Well,